Everybody, thanks for joining us on election night on KHOU 11+. I'm Ron Trevino.
And I'm Cheryl Mercedes. In just 30 minutes, polls across Texas will close in the March primaries. And as your election headquarters, KHOU 11 is ready to bring you up-to-the-minute results all night long.
But first, we got some breaking election news from up in Dallas County. A district judge ordering polling locations there to stay open until 9 o'clock tonight. It's due to what the judge said was, quote, mass confusion to where people could go vote. Both James Tallarico, the Democrat, and the other Democrat, Jasmine Crockett, claimed voters were being turned away because Dallas County switched to precinct-specific voting locations. Again, Dallas County voting will stay open an extra 2 hours until 9 p.m. tonight. KHOU political expert Brandon Rottinghouse joining us now in the newsroom with more on how this is going to impact everything.
Things are going to slow down. We won't see results for a little bit later. This was supposed to be a tight race anyway, and so for sure we're going to see, I think, a pretty late night.
When was this discovered?
Well, we've known about it for a while because the way the county voting works has been organized for quite some time, but it's a shift in terms of how they normally do things. Counties are allowed to have countywide polling, but it has to be essentially both parties turning their key at the same time. You had the parties balk, and so they chose to go back to the precinct level voting, which means that now voters have to vote at the precinct they're registered in instead of at any location they want countywide.
And what could be the effect down the road? Could there be some legal challenges to all these votes that come in after 7 p.m. up in Dallas County?
It's very possible. We could see additional litigation on this. It depends a bit on who's doing that. We certainly have seen the Attorney General's office use these as pretext to be able to talk about how there's this voting fraud issue. So it's very likely we're going to see some political fray on this, perhaps some litigation.
Now, look, these are both candidates complaining that voters are being turned away at the voting precincts. Does one candidate benefit over the other because of this now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because it's happening in Williamson County as well, this is sort of James Tallarico's hometown, it's definitely going to hurt him there. Jasmine Crockett, I think, is the one who probably stands to lose the most here because Dallas County is her hub. That's where she needs to get a significant number of votes. It's where she's most well known. It's where she spent the most money and time. So that's going to be, I think, a real hurt for her.
A very big story here, though. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this.
It's messy, and you know the process of voting and the administrating voting obviously is done by humans, and that means that you're going to have these kinds of mistakes. It all comes down to education. What the problem is that counties don't do a great job of telling voters and informing them where they're supposed to vote. The most fundamental thing on the most important day has to be done well, and a lot of counties don't do it well.
Yeah, and that can be frustrating. Thank you so much, Brandon Rottinghouse. We look forward to more of your insight throughout the evening. We'll have more on that tonight. For now, we want to get to Michelle Choi back here at home in Houston. She is live at the West Great Multi-Service Center, where voters are still lining up before the polls close. Hi, Michelle.
Hey there, guys. Yeah, you know, people keep showing up every minute that goes by. I feel like this line behind me gets longer and longer. We are back towards the back of the line because I really want to give you some perspective of just sort of the long lines that we are seeing out here at the West Gray Metropolitan Multi-Service Center. This, of course, as I have been mentioning in the last couple hits, is one of the more popular locations here in Harris County. But yeah, when I last checked in with you guys in the 5 o'clock hour, I was telling you how the line wraps around the tennis court. Well, in the last hour or so, it's gotten even longer. In the 6 o'clock hour, I told you we keep seeing more people showing up. Well, now I can tell you this line goes past the tennis court, past that baseball field as well. Just to give you some reference, the entrance, however, to this polling location is far up ahead of me there. You can see the breezeway there, all filled and packed with people waiting patiently to cast their ballot. Of course, polls close in less than 30 minutes now, so time is ticking. But remember, if you show up and you get in line by 7, you can still cast your ballot. Now, I can tell you the sentiment out here from talking to voters all afternoon is a lot of enthusiasm. People feel like it is important to show up today and to voice their opinions. Here's some of the people I've talked to. Take a listen. Tell me why it was so important for you to come out today.
Because I need to show strength in what I believe in as far as a Democratic Party and exercising my rights to vote.
Are you surprised at all by the turnout and the long lines?
Not at all, not at all. It's a lot going on now, so this just goes to show how many people in the world are here wanting to see the difference made.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the long lines have been here throughout the day since this morning for several hours now. But now that we are getting closer to that 7 p.m. Hour, we are starting to see more and more people showing up in the last 2 hours or so. It seems like the average wait time, though, from my last check-in is about an hour. So if you come to the West Gray location, just anticipate that there is a little bit of a wait. But the good news is the line is steadily moving, is what I've seen all day long. And folks here have been very patient. Everybody that I've talked to say that it's worth the wait as long as they can cast their ballot and let their opinions and voice matter. So that's the big highlights that I wanted to really focus on. Now, I have spoken to some election workers in the last 30 minutes or so. Some of the updates I got is that they did bring in some extra voting machines earlier today. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but it's all, of course, to keep this line continuing to move along steadily without any issues. I know some of you might be wondering, have there been any technical issues? Well, earlier this morning, the presiding judge did tell me that one of the machines did have a glitch, but that was quickly resolved. Harris County was able to get a team out here and get that fixed up. And since then, all machines have been running smoothly without any major problems. We also know that the Democratic turnout has been a lot larger than is what they were voting officials have been telling me. So the lines that you're seeing a lot of times are for those who are voting Democrat versus Republican, is what the consensus has been. But we, of course, are going to continue to stay out here, monitor things. It is now 6:36. Again, polls close at 7. Remember, if you get in line by 7 p.m., you are still good to vote. Back to you.
Yes, and the night is still young. It's just 6:36. You still have a few minutes to get out there. And if you're in line by 7, you get to vote. Thank you so much, Michelle Choi.
All right, now let's send things over to Orko Manna live at the Harris County Election Central. Orko, how are things looking there?
Yeah, Cheryl, right now it's kind of the calm before the storm. We are seeing a little bit more activity here with more election workers and volunteers start to file in, but the real work is really going to begin when all of the ballots from today get here, because all the ballots cast in person today in Harris County will need to come from all those polling locations here to election headquarters. That Michelle Choi in that location at West Gray, that's one of more than 280 polling places that are open today. That's a large number, and for reference, Harris County is the largest county in the state and the third largest in the entire country, so you can imagine it's going to take quite a bit of time and work to get all of those ballots here. Right now, on my right shoulder, we have the call center area. This is where folks can call in if they're experiencing any issues. Since we've been out here, we haven't seen too many calls being accepted and too much activity over there. Over my left shoulder is kind of the vote count. That's where the ballots will be counted once they arrive. They're going to be coming through these big garage doors here over my right shoulder. And where I'm standing, this is kind of a warehouse near Bush Airport that has been transformed into this election central for tonight. And we know that the in-person ballots will have to come here. We're expecting the first batch to arrive sometime around 8:30. Before that, we know that we're expecting to see the results from early votes cast shortly after 7 p.m. when polls close. We're expecting those numbers. We're also expecting to hear from Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth around 7 o'clock as well, to kind of give us an update of how today has gone so far and what we're expecting heading into the night. Again, more than 280 polling locations across the county for this election night, and a lot of eyes will be on those results. As Michelle alluded to, some big races, including the hotly contested U.S. Senate race for both the Democrats and the Republicans. In the past few minutes, we've seen more volunteers make their way through to get stationed into different areas. I overheard one election worker telling some of those volunteers to get ready to get through those garage doors again, because when those ballots arrive from all those polling locations, people are going to have to carry them inside the building here, process them, and then the counting will start. Again, we're expecting that first batch to arrive sometime around 8:30. That's typically the time that we see them get here. And then after that, we'll slowly start to see those results start to trickle in. But again, right now, it's kind of the calm before the storm. We're seeing some more people walk in to get ready We're going to have an update from Tanisha Hudspeth in just a little bit, so stay with us as we get more details on how today is going and what we can expect later on tonight. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Orko. Man, remember, you have until 7 o'clock to get in line to vote. As long as you're in line by 7, you will be able to cast your ballot.
Yeah, but millions of Texans voted in the primary before polls even opened today. Marcelino Benito joins us in the studio with more on early voting turnout. Marcelino.
Well, guys, Democrats are really excited by the turnout that they've been seeing, especially during the early voting period. I'll remind you that no Democrat has won a statewide office here in Texas since 1994. No Democrat has been elected to the U.S. Senate since 1988 here in Texas. But these early voting totals are giving Democrats a lot of confidence as perhaps we head into the general election later this year. Let's take a look at some of those totals. These are statewide numbers of the early voting turnout here in Texas. Democrats, 1,348,405 early votes on the Democratic side. That compares to about 1.1 million Republicans that voted early. Again, this is across the state of Texas. This hasn't happened. Democrats outpacing Republicans for at least 2 decades here in the state of Texas. Now, here is why Democrats are so excited by these numbers. That is a 126% increase compared to the primary in 2024 and a 35% increase compared to the primary in 2020. What's significant here is these were presidential years with obviously presidential candidates on the ballot where turnout is typically a lot higher. So the fact that Democrats are doing this in a midterm cycle is reason for them to be a little bit more optimistic than they typically are here in the state of Texas. Let's turn to Harris County here locally, the early voting turnout numbers. You can see Democrats here in Harris County also outpaced Republicans, about 212,539 Democratic votes to 125,336 Republicans that voted early here in Harris County. Why that's significant here locally is that Harris County Democrats more than doubled their 2024 primary early voter turnout. So Harris County Democrats obviously excited to see that. I want to focus on a couple other counties across the state that could give us a better idea of what may be going on here. Tarrant County has become a sort of swing county here in the state of Texas. That's a county west of the city of Dallas in the Fort Worth area. And this was the early voting numbers there. You can see Democrats far outpacing by about almost 40,000 votes Republicans. 124,000 some odd Democrats voted early in Tarrant County compared to about 86,764 Republicans. Again, this is typically a swing county, or has been the last couple midterm and presidential cycles. Let's turn now to Collin County, which is just north of the Dallas area. Now, this is really interesting. I want to point, Collin County typically for our viewers is a red county, but has been showing maybe a little bit of leaning towards Democrats, but still I would argue a pretty Republican county. These were 2024 early voting numbers. You can see by 2-1, the Republican Party had more early votes in 2024, 59,577 to about 21,052 Democrats. Let's flash forward 2 years to this midterm cycle, and you can see Republicans still outpacing Democrats, but you could see that margin has just been cut way down. And again, 2024 was a presidential year. 2026 obviously is a midterm year. Democrats keeping it close in Collin County. That is obviously a good sign for Democrats across the state of Texas. Now, I want to bear with me here so we can come out to this map. This is the map that we'll be using throughout the night, and this will start populating as we monitor different races. County by county, we'll start getting results here shortly after 7. We'll get a lot of that early vote populating in here. So we'll be watching a lot of those counties that we just talked about to see how this race shapes up. We'll be watching, obviously, Harris County. We'll be watching Dallas County, although we've just heard earlier in our stream that we're not going to be getting numbers there till much later in the night. Polls are going to stay open in Dallas County till about 9 tonight. But we'll also be watching Tarrant County, Collin County up here, and obviously Travis County will be big tonight in this Democratic race. Travis, Williamson County, that is Talarico country, if you will, on the Democratic side. Of course, we'll be watching this race very closely, and we'll be watching those votes come in a little bit. Hopefully we'll start counting real votes, guys. Back to you.
Well, thanks for that perspective, Marcelino. Yeah, it's interesting to see that turnout in early voting and what we'll see this evening, too, in comparison.
Fascinating trends there. All right, KHOU 11 is your election headquarters. Stay with us for up-to-the-minute results and expert analysis. We're going to take a break, a 2-minute break, back after this. back, everybody. A small group of highly motivated voters could determine who holds power here in Texas.
And a call comes down to who turns out to cast a ballot in the primary. Delissa Garza takes a closer look at who's showing up and who may be getting left out.
Most people who can vote in a primary election don't, but that is often where the power is.
I think that's true. I think that the primaries are historically chosen by a narrow group.
Historically, less than a quarter of voters vote in a Texas primary. Mike Yon, director of Center for Law Engagement and Politics at Sam Houston State University, says that the ones that do show up tend to be on the extreme left and right.
We have definitely lost some of that important middle.
While this happens nationwide, it can matter more in Texas. Many districts heavily favor one party, which means the primary often essentially decides the November election.
So the way to shape the people who are going to hold that office is by voting the right person in for the party nomination in March.
If someone skips a primary but plans to vote in November, what power have they already given up?
They've not only given up the ability to shape who they get to vote for in November, but they're also, without knowing it, shaping the messaging that those candidates take. And so as a result of that, they continue to not have a voice in the whole system. And 4 years is a long time without a voice.
Primary elections have not always been a given. They started in the early 1900s as a way to take control away from political bosses and give more power to the public. Back to you.
Thanks, Shalissa. We have a panel of experts with us all night tonight.
Yeah, hey guys, Marcelino Benito is with them right now. Hey, Marcelino.
Yeah, Ron and Cheryl, we got a talented group with us all night. Brandon Rottinghouse, our KHOU political analyst, Diana Iza with Mi Familia Vota, and Vlad Davidjic, a GOP political consultant. Thank you guys all for being here on this important night.
Absolutely.
So, Brandon, I want to start with you. We're seeing a lot of energy, more on the Democratic side, at least in the early vote. You just saw those numbers.
Yeah.
What is fueling a lot of this energy?
Yeah, no, I think your analysis was spot on. You've got the Democrats really, I think, engaged in this election cycle. The voting is up from 2022 by over 200%. I think that it certainly shows the Democrats are willing to embrace a new identity. That energy carries forward. The fact that there are so many new voters means that they're going to have more voters to talk to. The best predictor of whether a person will come out to vote in general is whether they voted in a primary. So Democrats are really enthusiastic and encouraged that this could be a big moment for them.
So, Vlad, what are you seeing on the GOP side? I mean, you guys have a very competitive Senate primary as well. There's a lot going on your side.
Yeah, no, certainly there's some energy there, but it's certainly lagging behind what Democrats are doing. I think what you're seeing a lot is people waiting to the last minute to decide what they're going to do. There are a lot of candidates in the Senate candidate and in other races as well, even Harris County Republican chair, where there's a very divisive primary going on, where voters are going to have to wait to the last minute and do their research and figure out what they want to do. So you're seeing a lot of people who normally would have voted early are now voting on election day.
Diana, we've talked many times throughout the years, and last election cycle, even the presidential cycle before that, we talked a lot about the power of the Hispanic vote. And last time around, we saw Hispanic voters shift very much to the right in Texas. How do you see that playing out this time, especially in these Senate primaries?
Yeah, I think more than anything, the Latino vote we continue to see is something that candidates are still after, right? Because we know the power behind the Latino vote. And so I do think that the results that we're seeing during early voting is a good indicator of where perhaps Latinos are also landing. We know that, for example, down in South Texas, right, we also have seen good turnout. And so we know that those counties are very heavily Latino. So I'm also excited to see what those results are going to be. But yeah, the Latino vote continues to be important, and I'm also excited to see where we land.
We got about 40 seconds, so I just want to go around real quick.
Yeah.
What is one thing you'll be watching very closely tonight as a marker of how the night will go?
I think we're watching what the turnout does in Dallas County for sure. That's going to be a big one. But honestly, Houston is a huge plum. This is a telling tale. The bigger Houston is, the more Democrats can hope to pad those numbers.
But
I'm looking at where the numbers are different between the outlying suburbs and the inner core of the inner loop of Houston to kind of see where those voters are coming from for Republicans.
And Diana?
The Latino vote. Where is it that we're landing, and is it that we're showing up in the numbers that we need to?
All right, we'll be watching all of that with you guys very closely throughout the night. Ron and Cheryl, we're going to send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Marcelino. Interesting. They're all four watching different things, and I myself am interested to see where that Latino vote
There's so
ends.
much to examine, yeah, and the night is still young, as I keep saying. KHOU 11 is your election headquarters. Stick with us for up-to-the-minute results and expert analysis. We're going to take another 2-minute break. Don't go away.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us for our election night coverage on KHOU 11 Plus, I'm Cheryl Mercedes.
And I'm Ron Trevino. The time is now 6:53, which means polls are nearly closed in Texas for the primary. Again, if you're in line before 7 o'clock, that's when the polls close, you will still be able to vote, so hurry up.
Some of the key races tonight are U.S. House seats under newly redrawn maps, including District 18, an historically Democratic stronghold. Top contenders include Congressman Al Green, who has represented the 9th Congressional District since 2005 and now finds himself in the new District 18. He faces off against Congressman Christian Menefee, who was sworn in just last month after winning a special election following the passing of former Congressman Sylvester Turner.
All right, Trayson Bragg, live from Menefee's watch party. Hey, Trayson.
Hey guys, yeah, that watch party is being held here at Chapman and Kirby, and take a look behind me. This is obviously early in the night, so if you take a look, it's pretty empty for now, but I'm told Menefee will be arriving here in about an hour or so you can definitely expect it to be a lot busier around that time. You know, like you mentioned, a lot of folks may be wondering, why is Menefee back on the ballot today? Obviously, in January, he won that runoff in the special election with Amanda Edwards to fill the final year of Congressman and former Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner's term, the last year of his term. He won that, and now he's back on the ballot today in the new District 18th in hopes of winning the next term, right? He's hoping today to actually become the Democratic nominee for the November midterm. And when we spoke to Christian Menefee earlier today, one thing he said was excitement. That was his big term. He said he's seen voters in his district, all ages, and he said one thing that was the common thread was that there was excitement amongst those voters. He said he's feeling that excitement as well, and he's hoping, obviously, that the votes go his way. But he says, when I asked him how he felt, he said excited and relaxed, and we'll be waiting for him to arrive here today. We'll speak to him more, but again, we will let you know as soon as we hear from him, as soon as he arrives here at Chapman and Kirby. You can count on us to get you the very latest. For now, I'll send it back to you all.
All right, thank you so much, Trayson Bragg. They're still putting the balloons up there behind you.
Yeah, all right, let's send it over to Katira Winfrey now, who is live from Al Green's watch party. Hi, Katira.
Today, Cheryl and Ron, Al Green's watch party will be happening here at the Fountain Life Center, but this is also doubling right now as a voting location. So those last minute voters are here. But I want to say about 5 minutes ago, I just got off of a Zoom call with Congressman Al Green. He's actually in D.C. right now. He said that was really important as the world, or as the United States, could potentially be entering into war with Iran. He went through a military briefing right now about the military's action in Iran and said right now he'll be pushing for peace based off what he heard at the briefing. But as this election goes, he says it's extremely important that the people in District 18 continue to have representation. He talked about his 20-year track record of serving the people of District 9, the people of Houston, Texas, and he hopes to continue that journey with the newly drawn maps in District 18. But even though he's not here in Houston right now, his watch party will be happening here, and he says he'll be paying close attention, hoping that the constituents of District 18 finally get the long-term representation that they desperately need. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Katira Winfrey. The polls closing soon in the Texas primary.
Yeah, in just a few minutes, Mia Gradney and Len Cannon are taking over our election coverage for the night. Coming up in just 2 minutes.
To our special election night coverage for the Texas March primary. I'm Mia Gradney.
And I'm Len Cannon. We'll be watching several key races, checking in with candidates throughout the evening as information comes in.
Polls just closed at 7 o'clock. Michelle Choi, she is outside West Gray Multi-Service Center. There, a polling location. We have seen long lines throughout the early evening. What's the situation now, Michelle, with those polls officially closed?
Hey there, Mia and Len. Well, as you just said, polls officially closed here in Harris County at 7 p.m. I just heard the official word from officials here. In fact, just moments ago, I literally heard a countdown, 3, 2, 1, to make sure people could make it in line just before that 7 p.m. deadline. I saw a few people, in fact, running down the sidewalk to make it to the very end of the line there. Now, we are still towards the back of this long line here at the West Gray Metropolitan Multi-Service Center. Just to give you perspective, turnout has been really good all day here. You know, we've seen the steady lines, and people have been waiting an average of what started around 30 minutes to about an hour now. In fact, there were several voters, as I mentioned, who made it just in time. 2 of those voters I got to briefly talk to off camera. They have gladly decided to join me live. Tell me again what your name is.
Ariane.
And you made it just a few minutes before 7 o'clock. Tell me, did you think you were going to make it in time?
You know, I did, but I overestimated how much time there was, really, yeah.
Tell me why it's so important for you to come out here.
It's important to me, to come out here because, I mean, what I'm voting for today is impacting things that, like, touch every day for me, and I'm new to voting, and, I mean, I want to see change, and this is how I can enact it, so that's why I'm here.
Are you okay with the long wait?
I'm fine with it. I don't care.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you made it just in time. And then over here we have Larry. Is that correct? Yes. And you made it just in time as well.
I did.
What do you think about the line? Are you surprised by the turnout today?
I am really surprised by the turnout, which is another reason why I'm here, because it's so important as part of the community, whether you're thinking locally or nationally, to participate in the process.
What's your hope after today?
That our country goes in a positive direction.
Despite what party you're on, right?
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you guys talking to us, both of you. I hope it's not too long of a wait. But that's really honestly the sentiment, guys, that we've been hearing from voters all day that I've talked to. They're enthusiastic and they're determined. You know, they feel like it's important for their voices to be heard, and that is why they are out here and are willing to wait up to an hour or possibly more to cast their ballots. But again, 7 p.m. polls close, yes, officially. If you get in line now, you will be turned away. However, if you made it just in time, like these voters here towards the back of the line, you just have to patiently wait to cast your ballot and it will still all be counted. But Hannah, if we can kind of whip around and just sort of show the lines that we're seeing here. So the line here at West Gray Multi-Service Center goes all the way back towards the baseball field. We are now getting closer to the tennis court. We are still far from the entrance, which is way ahead of us on the other side of this court. People are waiting under the alley there, and you know, people have been patiently waiting, as I said. We haven't seen any major technical issues throughout the day. Outside of this morning, there was a small glitch, according to the presiding judge, who told me that was resolved pretty quickly. Harris County sent out a team, and they haven't had any issues with voting machines since. Now, something that I did learn in the last hour or so is election workers tell me that they did bring in some more voting machines earlier today just to help get this line moving and flowing along. So hopefully that addition made a difference, and these people will eventually be able to cast their ballot sooner than later. But yeah, guys, the big story today, you know, really truly is this turnout. We have seen a steady flow of people all throughout the day. The last 2 hours or so definitely ramped up. But again, if you made it by 7 p.m., you can cast your ballot, so you don't have to worry. We, of course, will continue to stay out here and monitor things and keep you posted. For now, we'll send it back to you.
Exercising their right to vote. Michelle Choi, thank you.
Yeah, I got out to the polling location today. It took me an hour and a half.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It took me 15 minutes out in Fort Bend County.
So the lines were long in Harris County where I went. So these folks just getting in time will take a while. And the ballot is very long as well. So once you get in and start voting, it takes some time. Michelle, thank you. And as the polls begin to close, as folks finally get through and cast their ballots, all eyes will turn to Election Central, where the votes will be counted. Orko Amana is there tonight in Harris County. Orko.
Yeah, Len, the folks here are preparing for a very busy night. You saw Michelle there at that polling location. That's one of more than 280 polling places that are open today on Election Day. And all of the ballots cast in person today at all of those locations will all need to come here. This is basically a warehouse near Bush Airport that the folks here have turned into Election Central. That's where they're going to count all those ballots. Right now, we're expecting those ballots to start arriving here around 8:30. That's typically what time they start getting here. There's a big garage door behind me. That's going to open up as soon as that first batch of ballots gets here. But it's going to be a little bit of time because, again, Harris County is the largest county in Texas, the third largest in the entire country. So you can imagine it's going to take quite a bit of work to get all of those ballots here. Over my right shoulder is a call center. Michelle was talking about voting issues, if anyone experienced anything, that's where they can call. There's a tip line set up where folks can call the election workers here and the volunteers if they have any issues. That tip line, all the folks here are handling those calls. Since we've been out here, we haven't seen too much activity in that section, so that is some good news. That shows you that things, for the most part, have been running pretty smoothly. Over my left shoulder, that's the area where the ballots will actually be counted once they start arriving here. Now, it's about 7:06 p.m. We're expecting to hear from Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth about 7:20, 7:30-ish to give us a lay of the land for how today went in terms of any issues and how the turnout was at all the polling locations, as well as looking ahead to what we can expect tonight as those ballots arrive here. Again, the first batch of ballots we're expecting around 8:30, and then once they get here, they'll need to be counted, and then those results will slowly start to trickle in. Again, all eyes on those results for the large and really important races that we're watching, including the hotly contested U.S. Senate race for both the Democrats and the Republicans. So it's going to be a really important election to follow as those votes get here to election headquarters. We're going to be out here all night to see how everything goes, to see those first ballots arrive, and we're going to have more for you later on tonight. But we're going to send it back to you for right now.
All right, Orko Manna reporting from election headquarters for us. Thank you so much. Okay, now to our breaking election news up in Dallas County. A district judge ordering polling locations there to stay open until 9 o'clock tonight. Now, we're learning it's due to what the judge said was mass confusion to where people could go vote. Both James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett claimed voters were being turned away because Dallas County switched to precinct-specific voting locations. Again, Dallas County voting will stay open until 9 p.m. tonight. So let's talk now with our panel we have here. They're going to join us throughout election night, giving us their expert analysis. We have a talented group lined up here. Brandon Rottinghouse, our KHOU 11 political analyst. Diana Isa with Mi Familia Vota. Vlad Devicik, a GOP political consultant. Michael Adams with TSU. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to dive right in. Let's talk about this breaking news, okay, out of Dallas County. So it's about this confusion with specific voting locations. Vlad, we briefly discussed this before we went on air.
Yeah.
Break down the confusion here, because for those of us here in Harris County, you know that you can go anywhere county-wide, right? And then you have both your Democratic and your Republican vote in the same place. Not the scenario in Dallas.
Well, if you remember previously, in previous times, you had to go to vote at your precinct location.
Right.
And that changed over time, and especially here in Harris County, where you could just vote anywhere, wherever was most convenient for you. Dallas, they implemented a system where you had to go back and vote to that precinct for this election, and it's causing a lot of confusion for a lot of people who are used to voting at a certain location that may have changed now. So there are reports that some people may have gone to the wrong location or necessarily been turned away because they're supposed to vote at a separate precinct. So that's what's coming
So
out.
with that said, Brandon, what's the potential impacts here of having that confusion, and on the flip side of it, now having these hours extended?
Yeah, well, we know that a confused voter is a non-voter, so that's obviously what's driving a lot of this, and certainly the courts have seen this and they want to extend these hours to give people the right to vote. We also know from scholarship that basically if people are more likely to vote in these county-wide scenarios where they're at work, closer to their workplace instead of closer to their home. So if you tried to vote one place, you have to backtrack and go to the other. Maybe you try to go after work, but you don't have time. So that kind of confusion again leads to this non-voting. I think at the end of the day, it's certainly going to drive down turnout on election day. You're certainly going to see this impact the Democratic side of the Senate race. Probably Jasmine Crockett and her company right now are sweating because they know that they've got to get big numbers out of Dallas.
Right, because that's where she's based,
Yes.
is in Dallas, and that's where she's likely been campaigning the most
Totally.
as well,
Yeah.
too. And we know that voters are clearly motivated from voter turnout, but I don't know how motivated they would be if they show up to a location and it's the wrong location per se as well.
Getting a voter to go to two different places is really challenging, and I just think that most people are probably going to give up. How that affects turnout, we don't exactly know, but if it drops by 10%, then I think that Jasmine Crockett is probably going to lose ground in a place like Dallas, and for a razor-thin margin that this election is likely to come down to, is probably going to hurt her.
Every vote counts in this case. Let's talk about what's motivating voters to get out early for a change. Give us some insight and perspective into What is driving people to the polls so early?
I think we're seeing just energy up and down the ballot. The Democrats have bragged that they've got candidates running in all these positions. That means you've got more of a grassroots effect. You've got voters who are enthusiastic about candidates up and down the ballot. You've also got a national referendum on Donald Trump. You cannot take him out of the equation because people are really excited about weighing in on these national controversies. The conflict in Iraq or Iran is just basically the most recent version of this. So we're seeing a lot of that national politics seep into what's happening here in Texas.
And with the conflict in Iran, Professor Adams, is that going to be driving even more people on this day? Because that just all developed over this weekend, right, on Saturday. So is that perhaps chance why we are seeing waits of up to 90 minutes in some places and a line wrapped around a tennis ball court and another sports court at the West Gray Multi-Service Center?
Yeah, I believe that domestic issues tend to drive voter turnout and also participation, although we saw what happened over the weekend. But I think in terms of the Democratic side, in terms of you could say they were excited about voting, some of the policy issues, immigration and some of the things. I think that may have driven turnout in terms of the groundswell that we've seen in the early voting. But I'm also cautious because, again, I think Republicans tend to vote on election day, all right? And so that's why we saw in Harris County. In addition to that, there's some very other down ballot races, and as a result as well of redistricting, there's some congressional districts that are in play. Congressional District 2, Dan Crenshaw is in a tough race.
18,
and 18, 9
all
has
of
been
it.
totally done. And then you have Al Green and Kristen Menefee.
Right.
And so all of that, I think they've gotten their people out.
Diana, let's talk about the people who are voting as well, too. So we've heard a lot of Democratic talk, but what about the Latino vote, and especially with early voting?
Yeah, I think right now Latinos are just motivated to get out and do something. As someone that works at an organization that consistently talks to folks, to voters, what we're hearing is that they're just wanting to get activated, right? They're calling us, how is it that we can volunteer? How is it that we can just get civically engaged? And I think the timing right now with our primaries in Texas being so early on, people are just wanting to get to the voting booths and make their voice count.
All right, well, we are only just getting started. So much more to come, so much more discussion with you all. We want to give you some voting results right now. We'll take a quick break and be right back after this. We're back with breaking news on this election night in Dallas. Police have taken a man into custody outside Ken Paxton's primary night headquarters. Police removed what appeared to be several firearm magazines out of his car. It's not clear now if there were any weapons. We'll let you know as soon as we have updates. All right, let's talk local races now. Talking about the Harris County judges race. Of course, this is by far one of the most powerful positions in Harris County.
And an interesting race indeed, Mia, because on the Democratic side, you have a very familiar name now running for Harris County judge. It's former 3-term mayor Anise Parker. She's in this race, probably the most recognizable name. Lena Hidalgo, who ran twice, decided not to run for a 3rd term. So this race for Harris County judge now wide open.
And the Republican side of the ticket just is interesting there too, with faces like Marty Langton. But let's go out now to Troy Kless, who's following this race for us, the Harris County judges race. Troy.
Yeah, thank you, Mia and Len. So we are here at Letitia Plummer's watch party, which is just getting underway here within the past 20 minutes. And as you mentioned, Letitia Plummer is a former Houston City Council member going up against a former mayor of Houston in Anise Parker. The 3rd person who is running on the Democratic primary is Matt Salazar, who is a small business owner, still touting his experience against the other 2 competitors. So a recent University of Houston poll shows that Parker leads the other 2 candidates, but 24% of voters say they are still unsure of who they would decide to vote for come election day. Now today, both of the top candidates were out picketing with voters here. So here's what they both had to say about their pitch to last-minute voters.
Very simply, we cannot solve today's problems with yesterday's solutions. I have been here with you. I have been on the ground. I've served you as your council member. I understand what it feels like to raise a family as a single mom. I know what affordability looks like. I'm a small business owner. I just understand what people in the county need, and I'm ready to serve on day one.
There is no one more qualified to be Harris County judge than I, because of my experience as mayor. I bring the relationships, I bring the skills, the absolute experience in the job of Harris County judge, because it's so similar to the responsibilities of mayor.
Kless, KHOU 11 News.
As are
All right,
combined,
Troy, thank you. Now listen to Tanisha Hudspeth, who's the Harris County clerk.
Turnout at this level is typically only seen during presidential primaries. Unofficial results will continue to be posted throughout the evening at harrisvotes.com. Most likely, every hour and half hour, we are currently awaiting the return of equipment and official paperwork after election judges complete closing procedures at the more than 280 vote centers across Harris County. I say that lightly. There are many vote centers across the county that are still voting voters and will continue to do so for every voter that was in line by 7 o'clock p.m. Because we must tabulate 2 separate reports simultaneously, results will take slightly longer to process. So remember, there is the Democratic primary and the Republican primary, two elections taking place simultaneously. We will continue working through the night to complete all required procedures, ensure every vote is counted and verified, and meet the state's 24-hour reporting deadline. Overall, it's been a good election day in Harris County. Our call center has received approximately 1,200 calls. Most of them had to do with vote centers with procedural questions. That means election judges, election workers, getting those questions in, getting support and assistance throughout the day. Our other calls were from voters. Where do I vote? What's on my ballot? Many of those questions included, why am I in a new congressional district? I don't remember this. I didn't know about redistricting. I've been in a congressional district for so long. So many voters questioning their ballots and their new districts, including why do I have to choose a political party to vote in? So reaffirming and re-educating voters on how primaries work in the state of Texas, and that you do have to choose a political party in the primary, unlike November, although you don't have to register by party in Texas. I want to close by thanking all of our election workers, thousands of election judges, clerks, and every staff member and volunteer who helps keep Harris County elections safe, accessible, and transparent. I would be remiss if I left out our county commissioners and our county judge, along with many stakeholders in Harris County government that supports this operation. If there is a runoff, that election will be held Tuesday, May 26. If there is a runoff, which I suspect there will be on both sides of the political aisles, that election will be held Tuesday, May 26, 2026. Again, results should be online at harrisvotes.com. You can see the individual reports by party and the turnout a little bit as of 7:12 p.m. So again, the reports you're seeing right now online is all those who chose to vote early in person during those 11 days of early voting and cast their ballots by mail during that time frame. As of 7:12 today, a total of 201,000, over a total of 201,000 have voted election day. But remember, voters are still in line. So we are going to continue to give those updates and those counts for Election Day. You will see those results once those vote centers break down, get their paperwork done, and report in to our regional collection sites, which ultimately will come here to election headquarters. So as of now, over 201,000 voters have voted today on Election Day. Of that 201,000, over 130,000 were Democrats. So out of the 201,000, over 130,000 were Democrats and over 70,000 were Republicans. Again, this number is fluid because we have many vote centers still reporting. Are there any questions at this time? So the count throughout the night and meeting that 24-hour deadline never stops. There's no going home, taking a nap, and coming back. As you can see behind me, we have a robust team of staff, not only here at election headquarters, but around this county right now. And so we will all continue to work. I have no doubt that we would meet that deadline. We met the deadline in 2024 presidential and every other single election that I have run. And so essentially, I have my cot upstairs in my office. If I have to take a break, I will, and I'll come right back to it. But we will continue counting, and we will meet that deadline. Thank you for that question. Yes, thank you for that question in regards to critical safeguards in elections and what essentially happens, a brief summary because it's a lot of steps between election vote centers and coming in. So at the end, once every voter has voted at every single poll, the first thing that the election workers begin to do is gather all their paperwork for today. That's many forms and documents, and they begin to shut down many pieces of the equipment that have to be brought in to reporting. Every single vote center is given a regional collection site that's within a certain proximity of their election vote center. So there's about 5 total, one being here at election headquarters and several others in other regions of Harris County. So it takes the vote centers an average of 2 hours for the shutdown process before they leave the building. Voters should know that there's no one pushing a button at a vote center to send results, right? By law, you cannot do that. It all has to be tabulated at our central headquarters here at our central headquarters that we're standing in now. And so once they finish that paperwork, they shut everything down. The presiding judge and typically the alternate judge both go together to that vote center or follow each other to that regional collection site once they leave the vote center. And there is where our full-time staff members and many volunteers are handling checks and balances. They're opening their trunks, they're opening their cars, and our team members are going to check every single checklist item off. And the judge must sign that we have received all items, including the drives that have to be read before they leave the site. If for any reason they don't have that, again, what I say they have before they can leave, that means all the paperwork is set out, the machines, documentation, and before they leave that vote center, we are sure that we have those items. If we don't, we send someone to go to that vote center with those election workers. So those are many different aspects of what's happening. Once that paperwork is done at a regional collection site, then here at headquarters is where we receive the final drives, and the actual results are read and put out here from election headquarters. I gave you a summary, and that seemed long, but trust me, there are many more steps to that than you can imagine. So we all should be very thankful to the election workers in the field. They have worked over 12 to 16 hours. Some worked all of early voting and election day. And then to get to this last part of the day, after voting voters all day, finishing that paperwork, getting everything in. And, you know, I'm sure you all will be able to get some B-roll of what's going on at this regional collection site here. We have law enforcement partners here making sure that everything is safe as it comes into the center here and at our regional collection site. So a lot of members of the public, the community, and county employees help to cover this massive operation here in Harris County. Yeah, so in terms of discrepancies, the only thing that could come up in that process is spending more time at a vote center, right? And really, I wouldn't call that a discrepancy. It's a part of the logistical process that can be very demanding. So if for some reason we see that election workers are at a vote center for a longer period of time and they're sort of stuck, we have either trainers or technical individuals that go to those sites to help them with the shutdown process. It could be a litany of things, right, that come up, needing some help. I'm tired at the end of the day. Can you send someone here? And then if they get to their regional collection site where we're going through those boxes and those items and something for some reason has been left at the vote center or left behind, then we don't leave any stone unturned until we have all items in-house and here at the election headquarters before the night closes. That's a part of the 24 count and making sure that every single item is taken care of. You should also know another big part of this operation is the political parties. They not only appoint individuals to work the election polls, but they appoint individuals to work here at headquarters. So immediately here to this side, you'll see our central count center or station where the results are being read. Members of the Democratic and Republican Party are here reviewing all those numbers before they go out to the public. And so our ballot by mail, we have Democrats and Republicans alike reviewing the ballot applications and signatures. So there are a lot of checks and balances. And we also have the Secretary of State here to observe the work that we are doing. And we work together as a partner, although I am the chief election official of Harris County. So those are some of the elements. I don't necessarily call them discrepancies unless an election worker leaves and go get Whataburger before reporting to us, which could happen. But we do encourage them to get here in a timely manner. Yeah, I am happy to report there was more than enough paper and enough at all of the voting centers, so that is definitely not news. In terms of the equipment, every now and then you're going to get a machine that has a technical issue, but we had a robust amount of about 200 techs in the field that were able to address anything that came up within a certain time frame. Many of our vote centers also had full-time trainers at their sites for support there, as well as some of our recruitment team. So we've grown pretty big where we've trained a lot of folks to help out our election workers. Yes, are we going to have, hey, we've got a concern with the scan, does this need to be replaced? We have those, but nothing that has impeded the voting process. All voters, I just said, over 200,000 people have voted today. Over 340,000 have voted during early voting. And so we're proud of the work that our team has done over the month, well, several months, almost a year to prepare for today. All right, so just a couple of things. On Harris Votes right now, you can find the unofficial results. All those who voted early in person, applaud yourselves because your results are coming in now, as well as those who have voted by mail and returned their mail ballots. Throughout the night, we will continue to provide numbers as we receive them for vote centers, but please, pack your patience because it is going to take some time to get all of the boxes in, go through our compliance measures, and report those numbers. There are 2 reports, one for the Democratic Party, one for the Republican Party, and we will continue through that throughout the night. Thank you. I'm Tanisha Hudspeth, your county clerk, and I look forward to providing more updates tonight.
The first update of the evening from Tanisha Hudspeth, head of Harris County elections. Polls now closed, as she remarked, on this election day that's seen turnout typically seen only during presidential elections.
Big numbers.
She says, yes, very big numbers. 201,000 have voted on this election day. Over 130,000 Democrats have voted, 71,000 Republicans, but there are still votes coming in at this hour. More than 280 voting centers across Harris County. All the votes, they'll have to come to Election Central, where she was and where our Orco Manna is positioned tonight. Many locations still with voters.
In line.
They're actively voting because they were in line before that 7 o'clock deadline. But she is confident they'll meet the deadline at election headquarters to get everything processed in that timely manner.
Yeah, once they close permanently after all the votes get in, then they'll make the scramble. All right, according to Associated Press, we already have a race call just 33 minutes after the polls close. Here it is, U.S. House District 22. That is Republican Trevor Nels soundly winning, according to the Associated Press. Look at that, 82%. Trevor Nels, of course, replacing his twin brother Troy Nels, who decided not to run for re-election in Congress. So you have another Nels now in House District 22. Trevor Nels replacing his brother Troy Nels.
Let's get back now to the other big local races. We brought you the Democratic side of the Harris County judges race earlier. Now let's talk Dems with Maria Aguilera. Maria?
Yeah, we are at the watch party for Marty Langton. Again, that is for the seat of Harris County Judge. Now, doors opened here about 30 minutes ago. You can see people are just slowly starting to make their way in, and they'll be keeping a close eye on the results as they come in. Now, tonight, they're waiting to see who will emerge as the Republican nominee in the race for Harris County Judge. In recent polling showed former Houston City Council member Orlando Sanchez leading the GOP field ahead of Marty Langton, the president of the Houston Professional Firefighters Association, and Piney Point Village Mayor Eliza Dutt. Now, that same poll found more than half of likely GOP voters said they were undecided. So tonight could come down to turnout and those last-minute voters. Now, polls just closed about 30 minutes ago. As you heard from election headquarters, that's going to be a little bit of a lengthy process to get to count all of those and get the results in. We hear that Marty Langton is going to be speaking here at this stage between 8 and 9 p.m. And of course, we'll continue to monitor the results as they continue to come in through the evening. But for now, I'm going to toss it back to you in the studio.
Maria Aguilera with the Republicans in the race for Harris County Judge, and an overview there early. Thank you so much. Early election results, they are still coming in, and we are just getting started.
For now, let's take a look at the numbers as we look more election coverage coming back for you in 3 minutes.
The Texas Senate race is by far one of the biggest on the ballot and one of the most expensive as well for both parties.
Yeah, take your pick, Republican and Democratic side. Marcelino Benito working the election big board tonight. He's taking a closer look at this race. This is a barn burner.
Yeah, Len, the eyes of the country are really on this Senate primary. Let's start with the Democrats. We actually have numbers, actual votes that have come in. Right now, as the race stands, about 15% of the vote is in across the state of Texas. Crockett with a 50% narrow lead to Tallarico's 48%. I can tell you when we started getting numbers, this was about a 12 to 13. I think at one point I saw a 14-point lead. It has shrunk dramatically. It just changed again real quick on us. 23% of the vote now in. Crockett building up a little bit of a buffer, 4% buffer, 51% to 47%. Let's pop in, and that's Harris County actually just came in. We actually have some Harris County numbers. 65% of the vote in Harris County is in. This is all early vote, and you can see Crockett beating out Tallarico here by about 8 percentage points. Jasmine Crockett wants to see something like this in Harris County. She's going to have to perform well here if she wants any chance of winning this race. Let's pop into a county we've talked a lot about earlier in the night, Tarrant County. I told you this was really a swing county most election cycles. You can see it's purple because Jasmine Crockett is winning it with 58% of the vote in Tarrant County. She has about a 12% lead over her opponent, James Tallarico. If we go north to Denton County, things switch there. Tallarico building 11% lead with 66% of the vote in Denton County. Now this race far from over. It's going to be a tight finish whichever way it goes. Here in Hays County, which is just south of Travis County, this you could call Tallarico country. You can see with 62% of the vote in Hays County, Tallarico building a real thumping lead, 73% to 25%. He's going to need numbers like this to keep it close and perhaps overtake Jasmine Crockett. A couple more things I want to note. We're getting a few early numbers here in Harris County, but we're still missing a lot of vote. We're not going to know what's happening in Dallas County. This really impacts Jasmine Crockett. She's the rep that represents that part of Texas, so this is really where she's going to bank on a lot of votes. We have no votes there yet. We're waiting on more votes here in Harris County. And of course, James Tallarico represents Travis County. Williamson County is actually from Williamson, this part of the state right here. We don't have any votes coming in from there. So both camps have a lot more votes to come in. And as we talked to our panel earlier in the night, we'll be watching the Rio Grande Valley very closely to see how Hispanics shake out in this election. From experts I've talked to, they'll be pivotal in determining who actually comes out on top in this primary. But again, with now, and there you go, the numbers have just shifted. 30% of the vote now in Texas, and Tallarico has hopped over Jasmine Crockett. He has now built a 6% lead here in Texas. Again, that's with 30% of the vote. I'm trying to see, there you go. I told you about Travis County. We just got Travis County numbers, and you can see that huge lead he's built up in Travis County near his home county of Williamson. That almost 100, let's say, I didn't major in math. Maybe 70, 80,000 votes lead in Travis County. That's what's gotten James Tallarico in the lead now. Again, very early, still 30% of the vote. Now, as we prepared for this primary election night, I spoke with several of the candidates, including Jasmine Crockett, to hear why she believes she's the woman to replace John Cornyn. Take a listen. Why should Texans trust you to be able to flip that seat?
We're going to need someone that we know is battle-tested, someone who has been ridiculed, someone who has been attacked, someone who has been demeaned, yet is still standing. We are going to need a warrior.
We need a proven fighter. But State Representative James Tallarico thinks that he's the man to make history. I talked to him weeks ago as well. Here's why he believes he's the one who can flip this seat. How are you different than Jasmine Crockett, and why should they trust you to be able to, flip this seat?
I bring a history of winning tough races, of flipping a Trump district in a county that was so red it hadn't voted for a Democrat for president since Jimmy Carter.
Now, polls show a tight battle between Tallarico and Crockett, and if he were to win the primary tonight and then the general election, Tallarico would become the youngest member of the U.S. Senate. So we've talked about the Dems. Let's take a look at what's going on the GOP side, and I can tell you Republicans across the country are watching this one very closely too. Let's look at what's happening in Texas. 25% of the vote is in across the state, and John Cornyn, the incumbent U.S. Senator, has a 4-point lead on Attorney General Ken Paxton, 43% to 39%. This race is always going to be tight. Of course, we have another high-profile name, named Wesley Hunt in this race, sitting congressman from here in the Houston area. He's a distant third right now, may likely play spoiler if not one of these men can hit the 50% mark. Let's see what's happening, though, across the state. Let's pop in here in Harris County. John Cornyn with a 0.1% lead after the early vote here in Harris County. That's why it's that shaded that light pink. That's not good news for John Cornyn in a county like Harris County. Ken Paxton just running barely behind him here. That's likely why this race has shrunk. A poor performance, we should note, by Wesley Hunt. This is his area. If he was going to do well tonight, or at any chance, he would need to do a lot better than what he's doing here in Harris County, just 18% of the vote. Let's pop out just south of Harris County. We got Fort Bend County. That is shaded yellow. Again, another tight race. We're going to see a lot of these tight counties throughout the night. 68% of the vote in Fort Bend County, and it's Ken Paxton who's on top of John Cornyn in Fort Bend County. We do have some Dallas County early voting numbers, and that is solid red, and that's because it's a pretty significant lead for John Cornyn, at least based on the early vote. 52% of the vote to Ken Paxton's 31% of the vote. These Dallas area suburbs, Tarrant County, also leaning towards Cornyn, at least again with this early vote, 46.5% to 37.5%. But if you look across the map, there's not much purple. There's no purple. That's Wesley Hunt's color. There's a lot of red, a lot of yellow. This is going to be a two-person race as we continue to watch these numbers come in. Just checking to see if the board hasn't changed, and it hasn't. 25% of the vote in. Cornyn building a 4-point lead. If nothing changes, if not one of these men hits 50%, this is likely heading to a runoff. But I can tell you, I spoke to all the candidates in this race as well. John Cornyn told me that it's his experience that makes him the right man for this job, as he tries desperately to hang on for life for a seat he's held for 24 years. Why should Republicans pick you over Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt?
Because I've been doing this a while, and I think I've gotten better at my job and always rated as one of the most effective offices in the Senate.
I was kind of surprised when I heard him say his reason for wanting to stay in office is because he's, quote, been doing it for a while. That's exactly the type of answer that pushed Congressman Wesley Hunt to challenge Cornyn. Here's a part of my conversation with Wesley Hunt, the Houston area congressman.
He's completely out of touch, and that's because you stayed around for too long. The United States Senate is not a retirement community.
That's been a line that Wesley Hunt has used a lot in this campaign, that the U.S. Senate is not a retirement home. Voters don't agree at this point. Again, with 25.6% of the vote in, he's way back at 13%, not very close to even competing for that runoff spot should this stay the same. Now, I should note that we did reach out to Attorney General Ken Paxton multiple times for an interview, but of course we did not hear back. If we do in a runoff, of course we'll talk to him and give him the coverage as well. We'll send it back to you.
Extremely tight and competitive races there with the two front runners in both of those primaries. Marcelina Benito, thank you. Jason Miles, he is with a Senate candidate, Wesley Hunt's campaign tonight, the only candidate in this race with his watch party in Houston.
Yeah, he's actually going to be talking also about Ken Paxton. And we're hearing about an alarming threat outside of Ken Paxton's campaign headquarters in North Texas. Explain what happened here, Jason.
That's right. First of all, let's set the scene here. It's a beautiful night here in Houston. We're in Edo at a golfing bar, restaurant type venue. A little windy, but the crowd is steadily growing here, awaiting perhaps Congressman Wesley Hunt's arrival at some point this evening. But looking at those latest numbers with the results that are in so far, not great news for him. Again, so far, he has said he is the best candidate for not only the primary, but the general election. But political experts telling me as recently as today that they anticipate Cornyn and Paxton potentially ending up in a runoff without Wesley Hunt. Obviously, he's a West Point graduate, combat veteran, but politically, perhaps this is the biggest battle of his career. Now to that Paxton alarming situation, although we've gotten some more recent information that makes it less alarming, you might say, but approximately 5:16 this evening, officers were notified of a suspicious individual near the Paxton watch party, and that is in Austin this evening. The individual entered a vehicle that did not display a proper license plate and left the area. Officers conducted a traffic stop on that vehicle. The driver was arrested for traffic violations. During an inventory search of the vehicle, officers located ammunition. Now, initial information suggested a firearm or firearms may have been located as well. That has since been clarified. It was only ammunition. The individual transported to the police headquarters there in Austin for further investigation. Meantime, there were issues regarding voting in other parts of Texas, including Dallas County. Jasmine Crockett on the Democratic side of this U.S. Senate primary battle, along with opponent James Tallarico, both coming out earlier addressing issues regarding voters in not only Dallas County but Williamson County as well. In fact, I think I saw where Dallas County has extended the voting until 9 o'clock, meaning that those results up there may come in a little bit later tonight. But for now, we will continue to monitor things here at the Wesley Hunt election night party as the crowd continues to grow despite those early results, guys.
All right, Jason Miles reporting on the U.S. Senate race. Thank you so much. Polls, they've been closed for nearly almost an hour now, and we still have voters in line tonight.
Yes, case in point, Michelle Choi. She's live at the West Gray polling location. Michelle, you keep talking to people still in line. How long is the line with 10 minutes left or 50 minutes beyond the closing time?
Well, Len and Mia, you said it, you know, polls closed at 7. It is now 7:50. And yes, you still see a line here at the West Gray Metropolitan Multi-Service Center. This, of course, is one of the more popular voting locations in Harris County. So we do usually see those long lines. But today, the turnout has been huge. OK, we've seen people in line all day long. It really ramped up in the last, I would say, 2.5 hours or so with those last minute voters really trying to get in line before polls closed at 7. In fact, you saw what looked behind me right towards the entrance, the line wrapping, of course, outside the building. Well, it continues closer to the tennis court. Now, the good news is, since we last checked in with you guys about 50 minutes ago, the line has been steadily moving. This line actually wrapped around the tennis court all the way back to the baseball field. You can see it now ends right here. I can see the last two voters who made it just in time. In fact, did y'all run over here?
We look like it. No, we drove quickly.
You drove quickly? Did you think you were going to make it just in time?
No, there was someone driving really slow in front of me.
Oh my!
I didn't think I was going to make it.
Your heart was racing.
My heart was racing.
But I mean, I literally saw people running towards the tail end of it when the countdown started. You could hear 10, 9, 8, 7, and you guys made it.
Yeah.
You made it on one?
We did. So happy here.
Tell me why it was so important for y'all to be here today.
Well, I mean, I think it's our civic duty to vote. I feel like elections like these don't get as much love as the big presidential elections, but they have a really big impact on our day-to-day lives. I think more than some of the national elections. Like, I don't know. I think it's really important to come out for local elections.
Are you surprised at all by the large turnout?
Not at all. No, I'm not.
You're anticipating this?
Yeah, I've been here plenty of times. It's always been a long line, and I'm proud of it. So.
What's y'all's hope after today?
Honestly, I don't really have a great answer, I guess. Sure, we met a lot of the candidates, and they were all great, so I think we're in good hands no matter, how it turns out, hopefully. That's what yeah.
Well, we got an update from the Harris County Clerk maybe about half an hour ago. Over, I believe, 201,000 have voted today so far, and over 130,000 are actually Democrats, over 70,000 were Republicans. Do these numbers surprise you guys at all?
No, I think the area, I mean, most people we know growing up, we grew up around here, are Democrat as well, so that kind of tracks with our bubble, I guess, as well. So. Yeah, well, I was just agreeing, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you gentlemen talking to us. I know I kind of grabbed y'all last minute, but I'm so glad y'all made it just in time. I am told the wait time is about an hour or so, but it seems like that's okay with both of you, right?
Yes, I think we'll make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck to you both. Yeah, so you heard it. The average wait time is about an hour. I've been talking to voters as they've been coming out. They tell me once you're in there, the process is not too difficult. There are no technical issues tonight that I've heard of. In fact, I spoke with the presiding judge maybe about 20 minutes ago when he was outside here briefly. I asked him how things were going, and he, quote, told me very good, which is the good news out here for tonight. But again, the lines do remain outside here at 7:54. Hopefully it continues to move along. We'll continue to monitor things and keep you posted. Back to you.
We'll pick it up from here. And this, folks, is just the Texas March primary. Imagine what things could possibly look like come November. Is this a preview that we're seeing tonight with voters?
Those guys were entertaining, scrambling. They said, we made it here on 1, the countdown, and they got in line just in time. Way to go. Good job.
Early election results are coming in, and we are just getting started.
For now, look at those numbers with more election coverage coming back in 3 minutes. Take a look. Correct. Okay. 2:30. Are we splitting the difference, or are we? Okay. Thank you. Stand wide. We'll scoot in then. Go back to the, what are we? Still waiting for the numbers. Well, it's only one. You're watching special KHOU 11 election night coverage. Following the Texas primary, one of the storylines is Congressional District 9.
This is an all-new district after redistricting last summer. Representative Al Green had represented District 9 since 2005. And now it's a crowded field of candidates for the District 9 seat. Let's check out some of the voting numbers.
Yeah, here's a look at Democrats. Here they are. Ernest Clayton only 17%, but leading with 70% of the votes coming in right now. Leticia Gutierrez, who grew up in that district, which she touts loudly.
As for U.S. House District 9 as well, continuing with your voting results here. Looking at the Republican side of the ticket, we knew this one would be close. Right now, Alex Mueller has 37% of the vote. Briscoe Cain with a close follow there of 31%. Now keep in mind, this is with 47% of precincts reporting as well.
Also impacted by the redrawn lines we've been talking about is House District 18, long held by the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, followed by Sylvester Turner. A look at first at the Republican numbers for this race. Elizabeth Vences is trailing. She's at 45%. This is with almost 50% of folks reporting. And you see Ronald Dwayne Whitfield, he's at 55%. So that's a healthy lead with 49% of the votes reporting.
And now for the Democrats in Congressional District 18, Christian Menefee, the recent incumbent, we will call him, sworn in just last month after a special election following the death of Turner. He has 49% of the vote right now, while Al Green, the storied longtime congressman currently representing District 9, as we explain, with 43% of the vote tonight. Interesting, Amanda Edwards still on the ballot, although she had withdrawn from the race, but apparently they didn't have the time to take her off the ballot.
That's close.
Let's check in now with candidates for District 18. Trayson Bragg, he is with the current representative, Christian Menefee. Trayson, how are they feeling about those early returns?
Well, I'll tell you, we're here at Chapman and Kirby, and you know what? This is the location for Christian Menefee's watch party, and take a look behind me. We're starting to see many of his supporters starting to show up here, actually starting to pour in now to this location. And as you mentioned, Christian Menefee was on the runoff ballot, a runoff election back in January. He obviously won that position to continue the term of Congressman Sylvester Turner, right? And a lot of folks now wondering why he's back on the ballot today in this primary election. Well, he's back on the ballot running for his position and hoping to become the nominee of the new 18th Congressional District. And speaking of the new redrawn lines, one of his competitors in this election, as you mentioned, Congressman Al Green, also running for that same seat, vying for that same seat. But when we spoke to Christian Menefee earlier today at the Wheeler Baptist polling location, he said how excited he was about seeing such a large turnout in his district. He also mentioned that he saw voters of all legal voting ages from 18 all the way up to 73. He said that those voters seem to be excited as well. Obviously there's a lot of work goes into these elections and running for these positions. And he said, when I asked him how he felt about how things were going, he said they put in the hard work already, and now it's time to wait and see what takes place and what happens today during the election. And he will be doing that right here at this location, surrounded by his supporters. We're looking forward to hearing from him again shortly once he arrives, and we will continue to let you know exactly what he has to say once he's here. But again, here, excitement seems to be the energy, or seems to be the idea here, seems to be what he wants to portray here. And so we're going to continue to speak with him and let you know what we hear next. I'll send it back to you.
Trayson Bragg, thank you, with a little classic rap in the background going on.
Biggie Smalls, yes, maybe just setting the scene there.
Oh my.
Let's send it over to Kateri Winfrey now, who's live from Congressman Al Green's watch party. Green has long represented the 9th Congressional District and now finds himself in the new District 18. Kateri, we understand you've spoken with Green tonight because he's not here in H-Town himself.
Hey, yeah, I did. I just spoke to him, I want to say maybe an hour ago. He's in D.C. right now. He's having an important conversation about the U.S. involvement with going to war with Iraq and all of the different things that are happening there. He said he got to sit in during a military briefing today, and based off what he heard, there was no imminent threat to the U.S., so he's going to vote for peace tomorrow. But today, he's hoping helping voters vote for him. As you mentioned, he's represented District 9 for roughly 20 years, and all the people in this room right now is hoping that he continues that congressional journey, but now within District 18. He spoke about his track record in the district and his ability to stand up and fight for people, and he says although he's no longer representing 9, the hope is that he's able to continue that work here in District 18. He says there's a lot of work that needs to be done and that he's the person to do it. Here's what he had to say when I spoke to him about an hour ago.
We're losing a congressional seat, so we have to have someone who's going to be dependable, who's going to show up for work, who's not going to take time off to campaign when we should be voting. And I'm that person. I've done this for 20 years, and my voting record is 97.9% over 20 years.
And Congressman Green said that while it is important, this election is extremely important, he's serving as a congressman. So his duty right now is in D.C. as we try to navigate what's next with any kind of conflict with Iran. So again, he says he knows this is an important day and wishes that he could be here, but he says he has a duty to his constituents to be there and be a voice and vote for what they want to see and what they want to see with the U.S. as well as their district. But we'll be out here and we're expected to hear from the congressman virtually later on today or later on tonight as those numbers start to roll in. And of course, we'll be out here and bring you all that latest information and coverage coming up later. Back to you guys.
All right, Katira, thank you. And Marcelino Benito is now back with more on the race in the 18th Congressional District, the newly redrawn district. Marcelino, you're talking to the panelists. I'm curious to hear what they have to say given the numbers that have come in so far.
Yeah, Len, we're going to get to the 18th Congressional District in just a second, but we do have some breaking news. The AP has just called the governor's race on the Republican side, Governor Abbott easily winning his primary. No surprise there. I don't think
what?
No surprise there, but nonetheless, the AP has called it tonight. Let's get back to the 18th race here at home. You know, when we were talking about the Senate race, I interviewed Congressman Wesley Hunt, and one of his attack lines on John Cornyn was like, the Senate is not a retirement home. Yeah. It seems like perhaps voters agreed in this particular race. They were ready for new generation of leadership, although the race hasn't been called. Menefee in good shape. Talk to me about the dynamics of this race in terms of a young, more future-looking candidate, and then Al Green, who served for many years.
I think what we have is a generational change, succession plans, and I was telling Brandon earlier, in Dallas, Eddie Bernice Johnson, she anointed Jasmine Crockett, all right? And that was to the dismay of a lot of people in Dallas. We didn't get that. Look at what we've had in the last several years with the death of Sheila Jackson Lee, Sylvester Turner, and now we are here in this moment. And I think we have to talk about succession plans in Congress and what it means and does it reshape the Democratic Party in terms of what they stand for. And so that's my take.
I think it's fully correct, and the generational change is also, I think, a sense of voters of a tactical shift. Al Green represents this generation of members who would move from a protest to politics, right? The cane shaking is a great example of that, but voters now want something a bit more. So Menefee represents a kind of change through real activism, actual work, and making a difference in terms of, kind of going to court, making sure that these rights are fought for. So I think it's a tactical change in addition to this generational change, and that's going to be, I think, the new norm in Houston.
And Vlad, we got here to this point because of redistricting, right? I mean, Al Green's in this position because his district was redrawn.
Yeah. Well, and that's reflective also of the substantive change with regard to how the politics meets the moment, right? So you have these long-term political figures who either get redrawn and pushed out of their district, or they find themselves on the outside looking in. And so one of the dynamics between Green and Menefee, voters saw, like Professor said, they saw Sheila Jackson Lee pass away in office. They saw Sylvester Turner pass away in office. And there is something in the back of every voter's mind. Do I really want to go with another geriatric candidate, or do I want somebody young and vibrant? Even they may not have as much experience, but at least they have more of a fighting chance to actually put more substantive change through when they get office.
And Diana, I was looking at polling for this race, and Menefee performed very well in polls, especially with young with young voters. Talk to me about obviously why you think that is. Is it just the fact that he's simply younger?
I think young voters see themselves reflected in Menefee. I think we've also been hearing from young voters this narrative that we even heard during Joe Biden's campaign, right? We want someone fresh, we want someone new. And so if we get the chance to vote someone in here, in someone that's going to represent Houston, I think Menefee is that representation. So yeah, young voters are excited and they want that transition to young leadership.
He also positioned himself here in Harris County through his work at the county attorney's office as a fighter against the Trump administration, which I assume, and I'm curious what you guys would think, helped him in not only to win the older district, but also this new one.
Yeah, it's a great point, and Michael made this point earlier about the way that the geography changed, and certainly that shift gave Menefee the opportunity to be able to connect to those voters in a new way. The voters aren't rejecting Al Green, they're just looking to a kind of new generation of Al Green. And you're exactly right, the ads that Menefee ran were very carefully done. They were really engaging, they had a kind of 90s feel to it. So it brought in this, I think, new look that Houstonians are really looking for, and I think the more they can develop that momentum, the better they're going to be able to weather this transition. No party wants to have this internal fighting based upon ideology or age, but they have to have, as Michael said, this transitional moment, and it has to be done smoothly if there's going to be a successful story to head.
Yeah, but the irony of it is that 70% of the people who were in District 9 were moved into District 18, and it could be a referendum that they may not have wanted Al Green. So if that's the result that we'll get tonight.
Alrighty.
And so it was totally cracked and broken up.
Thank you to all of you. We'll be back with you in a little bit. Len and Mia, we'll send it back to you.
Marcelino, thank you. Thank you, panelists, for your insight. As the numbers continue to come in, we're able to kind of assess what we're looking at here as we get closer and closer to results.
And speaking of those numbers, we're now more than an hour removed from polls having closed. Orko Manna is at election headquarters. Orko, we understand you got another update from the Harris County Clerk.
Yeah, that's right. Well, election officials tell me that right now there are roughly 175 polling locations that are still open. Again, you mentioned more than an hour after polls have technically been officially closed on paper. But again, if you're in line, you will still be able to vote. So right now, roughly 175 of those polling locations are still open. We've been seeing those images from reporters like Michelle Choi, seeing those large crowds out there. And that's what we're seeing with the numbers as well. As of just about an hour ago, the Harris County Clerk tells me that the in-person votes today, as of an hour ago, was 201,000 voters. And again, with those voters still in line, that number is expected to go up. Add that with the roughly 345,000 voters that were early votes and mail ballots within that time frame. This is turning out to be one of the biggest turnouts that we've seen. Take a listen to what the clerk had to say a little bit ago.
We project that this will be the first midterm primary election in which we surpass a combined 500,000 voters across early voting and election day. Turnout at this level is typically only seen during presidential primaries.
Yeah, you heard it there. Usually we see those kind of numbers during presidential primaries, but we're seeing that right now in a midterm primary. So that just shows you how many voters really think that casting their ballots in this election is extremely important. Now, we also asked Clerk Hudspeth a lot of questions about how today has gone so far. She tells us that other than just minor issues that are typical for using electronics, everything has been pretty smooth. Here at election headquarters, there is a call center set up for both election workers and voters to call in if they experience any issues. We haven't seen too much activity in that call center, so that is good news that things seem to be working smoothly. Right now, we are expecting that first batch of ballots to arrive here within the next maybe 15 minutes or so. Typically around 8:30 is when we see those first ballots arrive. There's a big garage door there behind me at this warehouse, and that is where those ballots will start to come in here. Once they get here, they'll have to be counted, and then we'll start to see those results trickle in. But again, the turnout is really the big story here with this midterm primary. We have Michelle Choi, who is at a polling location that is still open right now. And Michelle, what are you seeing out there? Pretty long lines, I would imagine.
Hey there, Orko. Well, you said it. The story really is about the turnout today, right? And that includes the polling location here, the West Gray Metropolitan Multi-Service Center, which of course is a very popular location in the Midtown area for voting. But yeah, take a look. I actually have some really good news. It's the first time since I've been out here early this afternoon that I have seen the line this short, guys. Yes, it still is outside of the building. It wraps around a little bit, but nothing like what we've been seeing over the last several hours, which is long line with people adding to that line for several hours, wrapping around the tennis court, all the way back to the baseball field. If you're familiar with this location, is how long this line is. But polls closed officially, I would say, well over an hour ago. It is now 8:14, and yes, people are still out here. It looks like some of the voters we talked to have waited well over an hour now to cast their ballot, but the sentiment is the same. You know, the energy out here has been the same all throughout the day. People are enthusiastic. They are very determined to cast their ballot and make sure their voices are heard. They tell me that there's so much going on in the world, and they feel like it is their duty to come out here and vote. And so people are willing to wait in this line, willing to wait over an hour if necessary. You know, in the last hour or so, I've talked to several voters, including some who showed up just in time, right at that cutoff point at 7 p.m., including two guys who told me they thought they weren't going to make it, but they did just in time. And so we were able to talk to them about 20 minutes ago or so, and they seem like they are getting closer and closer to the entrance here at this polling location as well. The good news is we didn't have any major, any technical issues at this voting center, other than a minor glitch this morning, which the presiding judge told me earlier today that was quickly resolved. Harris County sent out a team to get that resolved, and all voting machines have been working very well, is what he said. In fact, when I spoke with him about an hour ago while he was outside, I did get a chance to quickly ask him, hey, how have things been today? And he told me, quote, very good, which is the good news. Now, of course, this turnout has been amazing, right? We've seen so many voters, especially at this location, but I'm hearing this isn't the only one. There are voting locations, several across Harris County, where voters are still waiting to cast their ballot, but the line is moving steadily. People are starting to trickle inside, and it seems like it's going to wrap up, at least from my guesstimation, in about a half an hour or so. Looks like everybody will be inside and able to cast their ballot. A quick note from election workers. They told me it's best to bring, you know, a cheat sheet to help you kind of get through this line a lot faster. Obviously, that is for people who made it just before 7 o'clock today. But again, the good news, this line looks like it is going to wrap soon. We'll, of course, continue to stay out here just in case and keep you guys posted. Back to you.
Appreciate it, Michelle. Michelle mentioned that several voting locations are still open.
More than several.
Yes, 175 to be exact. That coming from the Harris County Clerk not too long ago. Stay with us. We have another look at some of the results rolling in this evening.
Sending it to our live results board, where every result will be updated in real time. I'm Lynn Cannon, along with Mia Gradney, back after this.
8:21 now on election night. The numbers, they are steadily coming in, and we're watching all the early results here in house at KHOU 11.
Yeah, things starting to shape up here. Marcelo and Benito back with a look at some of the live election results that are coming in. What is standing out? What are the races?
Well, and Mia, the map is starting to fill in. One race we haven't talked about much tonight, haven't shown you much results on, is the Attorney General's Republican primary. Take a look at how things stand right now with 39% of the vote in Texas. Mays Middleton, state senator from the Galveston area, leading with 44% of the vote. He's leading Congressman Chip Roy with 28%. Chip Roy represents Central Texas, the Hill Country area. Wright is actually the one endorsed by Ken Paxton. He's sort of his chosen successor. And then State Senator Joan Huffman from our area as well. She sort of branded herself as returning the Attorney General's office to more normal times, less political. Clearly voters not too keen on that, at least not in this primary. The way things stand right now, if nothing changes, this will go to a runoff. Still about 60% of the vote left to count. Let's pop into some of these counties. Let's pop into Harris County, see what we see here. Again, no surprise there with Middleton building his lead. In Harris County, 57% of the vote, 44% Middleton. It's actually Roy who's in third place. This may be part of the problem why Middleton is actually building that gap. In a county like Harris, the biggest county in the state, Roy is performing in third place. Ken Paxton's chosen guy is at 21.7%, a distant second from Middleton, but that could be causing some problems for Chip Roy. Just for the sake of curiosity, let's pop into Fort Bend County. Here in Fort Bend County, Chip Roy in second place, but not by much. 4% separating third and second place there in Fort Bend County. I want to also pop into Galveston County. I told you Middleton, this is his home base. No surprise here that he's building a big lead over Chip Roy. Again, if you were joining us earlier in the day, we showed you polling, and polling showed this was a two-person race between Middleton and Roy, but the public polling showed Congressman Chip Roy was up by about 2 percentage points. It was a very tight race, well within the margin of error, but this type of lead right now, a 15 percentage point lead, is kind of surprising. I was just talking to the panel, shouting at the panel from across the big board, and they were sort of surprised by these numbers too. There are still more votes to count, but again, Middleton with a healthy lead at this point. Let's pop into the race everyone is watching across the country, and this is the Senate primary here in the state of Texas. Let's pop in first on the Democratic side. More votes since we last checked in, and that lead has expanded a little bit for James Tallarico, with 43.5% of the vote in Texas. Tallarico now leading Jasmine Crockett by 8 percentage points, 53 to 45%. Let me look at the board here and see what's changed here. Let's see if we've gotten new numbers here in Harris County. Harris County hasn't changed. That's an 8 percentage point lead for Jasmine Crockett. This appears to still be the early vote, so plenty more votes to come in here. Let's pop into Tarrant County, see if we've gotten anything else there. No real updates in Tarrant County. Jasmine Crockett building a healthy 12 percentage point lead there. She's going to want to perform very well in Tarrant County. She's also going to need a huge performance in Dallas County if she wants to start working on overcoming this Tallarico lead. You'll notice that in the northern Dallas area suburbs, I'm talking Collin County. Let's take a look at that. 69.7% of the vote in, and Tallarico building a pretty healthy lead here, a 14 percentage point lead in Collin County. I was talking to our KHOU political analyst. He says this is really poised to be Tallarico country. These are suburban white voters. Polling showed that Tallarico did very well and does very well with white voters. Jasmine Crockett in polling performs much better with African American voters, African American women. So she's going to need a big showing in places like Dallas County, continue to do well in Harris County. I want to pop in here to Williamson County. We have no numbers here yet. This is where Tallarico's from. I believe his state district is here. So this will be a pot of votes in theory for James Tallarico. If we go to Travis County, this is the Austin area, very progressive part of the state. Tallarico with a very healthy lead, helping to pad his statewide margin. Same thing we're seeing in Hays County. Now, still plenty more votes to count. One thing that has changed in the last hour, half hour since I last checked in on you with these statewide Senate results is we're getting some results here from along the border. This is Webb County, a border county, large Hispanic population, and you can see James Tallarico with a very healthy lead, about 6,000, little under 6,000 votes margin he's building in a place like Webb County. come down here to this tip of Texas, Cameron County, same sort of thing, pretty healthy lead, another 6,000 vote pad that Tallarico is building here along the border. And that was the one thing we weren't sure how it was going to play out. I told you Crockett does well with African American voters, Tallarico doing well with white voters. Hispanic voters, the polling showed they were sort of split. Whoever would come out on top with the Hispanic community likely to be the winner of this primary. But again, plenty more votes to count across Texas. But if you're Tallarico, you're feeling good at this hour, an 8 percentage point lead. Let's switch over to the Republican side. A lot going on in this race as well, and a lot of Republicans nationally keeping a close eye on this one. It appears to be headed to a runoff. Still a lot of vote to count, but this is a nail biter. 42% to 40%. Cornyn on top of Paxton at the moment. Most public polling showed back and forth. Either one of them was on top and split by about 2 percentage points. So this is holding true to polling. I got to tell you, a disappointing evening for Wesley Hunt, back at 13%. That's the Houston area congressman. His color on the map is purple. You don't see any purple on the map. That means he's not leading or winning in any Texas county at this point, a distant third. This is clearly a race between the incumbent Senator John Cornyn and the Attorney General Ken Paxton. Let's pop into Harris County to take a look at what we're seeing here. We haven't got any new numbers yet, but you can see how tight it is here in Harris County. Just a 0.1% difference. It's a little under, less than 100 votes in the early vote separating John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. If you're Cornyn, I would think you would want to do a little better than that in Harris County. Let's pop into Dallas County. That's a solid red. That means Cornyn's built a healthier lead, 52.7% to 31.4%, about half of the vote on the Republican side in Dallas County. So we'll continue to watch these numbers. The border, again, will be another key issue, another key part of the state. We'll continue to watch right along here, along the Rio Grande Valley. You see a little red here in Cameron County, but you also start to see some Paxton yellow. I'm no political analyst, but I would assume Paxton may do well in the border area. He's very aggressive in terms of immigration policy, calling out John Cornyn's support of certain border policies. So we'll see how Paxton does along the border communities and with Hispanic voters. We've been talking with our panel throughout the night. Hispanic voters last election sort of shifted to the right. We'll see where they end up in terms of this Republican primary. A lot more votes to count, but this is going to be a nail biter, and odds are this one is going to run off. John Cornyn, guys, has spent $69 million, a little more than $69 million between his campaign and his supporting PACs, just to get him to this point and get him to a runoff. That's a lot of money. They're going to have to spend a lot more if they want to get him across the finish line in a potential runoff. Now, let's go to Jason Miles. He's covering the Senate race. He is at Wesley Hunt's party here in the Houston area. Jason, I got to imagine these numbers are not something the Wesley Hunt campaign want to see, a disappointing showing thus far.
Absolutely. You know, it's a beautiful night here in Houston. We're at a venue in Edo, an indoor-outdoor type situation, but certainly not a celebration here. From early on, it looks as if Wesley Hunt doesn't really hold a position in this race. Obviously, many political experts have considered him more of a spoiler than a contender in this race, and these results we've seen so far kind of back that up. But there are about 50 or so people here making their way, have been making their way in over the last couple of hours. When and if Wesley Hunt will speak remains to be seen. We did speak with a person with his campaign earlier to get maybe a potential timeline for that. She cannot provide that or provide any information on whether he will be taking questions or potentially endorsing one of these other gentlemen who appear to be headed to a runoff. Obviously, Hunt does represent part of Houston in Congress. That is something he will continue to do, at least in the House of Representatives up in Washington, at least until next January when his current term expires. The West Point graduate, combat veteran, has relied heavily on his record, saying he's up for fights, and even if there are daunting fights, as this campaign has been. As for Cornyn and Paxton, they have election night events. I believe Cornyn is up in Dallas, Paxton in Austin. In fact, over the last few hours, we've learned that someone was taken into custody in Austin, pulled over for exhibiting some kind of suspicious behavior. His car was searched, that person's car was searched, and ammunition was found in it. No firearm, despite some earlier information, but that person is being questioned at the Austin Police Department tonight. So some interesting activities there related to Paxton's watch party. Meantime, we've heard from Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico on the Democratic side of things, issuing concerns regarding some voter issues in Dallas County and Williamson County. In Dallas County, the voting extended to 9 o'clock, so results in that race may be coming in later than normal as we keep an eye on the U.S. Senate primaries here in Texas, covering the Wesley Hunt campaign here in Houston specifically. Guys?
All right, Jason Miles there with the latest on the race for U.S. Senate. KHOU 11 continuing to bring you live election night coverage with up-to-the-minute results and expert analysis. In some races, they are coming into view.
Yes, they are.
Others are still developing with more votes to count, so don't go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be long before we really start to get a lot of results in. We're back in just 3 minutes from now. Here's a look at some of the numbers just in.
We're back with your election night coverage, and with so many elections, there is so much to unpack tonight, especially this one, starting with the record long lines of turnout with voters, over 175 voting locations still with people actively voting that we last heard from the Harris County Clerk. That definitely is the standout headline of the evening. Our distinguished group of panelists are back to walk us through some of those other headlines. I want to fill you in on who's joining us tonight. We have Professor Michael Adams with TSU, our KHOU 11 political analyst, Brandon Rottinghouse, as well, Vlad Devajic, a GOP political consultant, and Diana Issa with Mi Familia Vota. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's start out with what's standing out to you in looking at the numbers and the returns thus far. Brandon, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, like you said, I think, this is like a Rockets playoff game. People are really fired up and you're seeing a lot of voting. That's good because that means competition, and competition is always going to be the kind of heart of turnout. I'm interested to see how the Senate race turns out on both sides. Obviously, on the Republican side, it's closer than I expected. I thought Ken Paxton would be a little bit ahead with a bit of an edge. We may see that as the numbers continue to come in. On the Democratic side, obviously, the delays coming out of North Texas are going to be a big factor there, but you're seeing Tallarico with just a little bit of a lead. The Attorney General's race is interesting, too. Mays Middleton coming out ahead there in early voting. I suspected that you'd see that flip with Chip Roy ahead, so we'll see how that all plays out.
And it's interesting, that race in particular, the Attorney General's race, because, we're talking about endorsements. Yes, and you have, Reitz was endorsed by Attorney General Ken Paxton, Reitz was endorsed by Attorney General Ken Paxton. And then you had Roy, who was endorsed by Ted Cruz. So do endorsements mean anything at this point if we have Mays Middleton in the lead?
Yeah, in a crowded field, it can mean something, especially if it's a big endorsement. We were talking about this earlier. It depends on the endorser. It depends on the range of the different candidates. But voters are looking for a shortcut. They want to understand, with a big range of people, kind of who is like the people that I like. And so endorsements can be a meaningful tool for people to make shortcuts.
And it's interesting, in looking at the AG's race, but then you look at the U.S. Senate race, and on the Republican side of the ticket, President Trump really danced around giving an endorsement to what we considered at one point the three top runners, but now we just have two top runners in that race as well. So that's interesting too, I would say.
Yeah, I think here it could get really ugly in the runoff, and the endorsement of Donald Trump, if it stays really close, all right, he still can stay on the sidelines. And if we were to see a Tallarico, you really don't have to say anything. Just let them beat each other up and say the thing, and I think that could help you as well. So there are a lot of scenarios that could develop if this trend continues and if it's a runoff.
Exactly. Vlad, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the lack of the endorsement actually helps a lot of people make up their mind as well. But the other factor that really drives that is the competing nature of the endorsements. Because if you have somebody like President Trump or Governor Abbott or Senator Cruz, and you have someone who's a core conservative Republican voter, who are they going to pick? Who's going to be the standard bearer for that voter? And so it really reflects the power of each of those endorsements in this cycle.
We've talked about the voter turnout, and Diana, I want to ask you, do you think this is a preview and a glimpse into what November could look like if this is just our March primary that we're seeing?
Absolutely. We see trends that usually how we perform during primaries is a good indicator of how we're going to be performing during the general. And I think for a lot of voters, this is the first step. And we will continue seeing more registered voters that will be able to participate in the general. And so I'm excited to see how much more activation and mobilization we'll see from our voters for the general. But I think, it's a good indicator that we will see long lines again in November.
Well, right now tonight we are focused on those long lines and the processing of those votes and returns coming into Election Central. That's where we find Orko Manna with the very latest there. Orko?
Well, we've been talking about the turnout. Officials are telling us that the turnout levels we're seeing right now, we typically don't see unless it's a primary election for a presidential year. So you can just imagine how many people are coming out to vote. To talk to me a little bit more about the turnout that we're seeing, we have Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth. Thank you so much for joining us. big numbers. Talk to us about what we're seeing out there right now.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Look, on the very first day of early voting, Harris County on both sides of the political aisle surpassed not only the 2022 midterm primaries, but the 2024 presidential primaries. So we knew on trend was going to be high turnout throughout the early voting period. So during early voting, over 340,000 individuals had already cast their ballots in person or by mail. Here we are election day, and voters are still in line at more than half of our vote centers casting their ballot because they were in line by 7 p.m. So far, 210,000 who have voted today on election day. Of that, about 138,000 are Democrats and over 71,000 are Republicans. But stay tuned, because as voters continue to vote, they will continue to get those voters taken care of. The vote centers will then shut down to then get to regional collection sites so that we can start providing to you election night numbers.
I was going to say that 210,000 in-person votes from today doesn't even scratch the total number that we're going to see.
That's right.
You mentioned how many vote centers are still open right now. Do we have a rough estimate on that number?
Yeah, so it was about 280 vote centers. Remember, it is 2 elections happening simultaneously at the same time, Democrats and Republican. Of that, 237 are still voting voters. And so those election workers will be working to get every single voter processed. One of the aspects to this election is that we have a very long ballot. Not only just a long ballot, but one of the longest ballots in the nation. And so every single voter sees anywhere from 80 to 100 pages on their ballot to be able to select through every item. So it's going to take voters a little bit of time to get through that ballot. And look, there's no law on taking too long to vote. They can take their time, make their selections. And so we'll continue to make sure that every single voter gets that opportunity. Again, that was in line by 7 p.m. and then start with the remaining procedures as elections close tonight.
Obviously, taking the time to actually vote, and then it will take some time for those ballots to reach here at election headquarters where they'll need to be counted. Talk to me a little bit about that process, getting those ballots from those vote centers here to be counted.
Yes, I think the biggest myth is that somehow when those vote centers shut down, someone's pressing a button or the election judge is pressing a button and results go out. That is not at all how it works in the state of Texas, right? So the very first thing that voters have to do is start their closing procedures at every single vote center. That includes all of their paperwork and gathering of all their items in chain of custody. Once that is done, the election judges and the alternate drive those items in boxes to what is called a regional collection site. Harris County is the size of 25 states combined. And so when we think about all of the vote centers that have to report, they all go to a regional collection site nearby, which is plenty of staff, including here at our headquarters, that will take in those items, handle the compliance paperwork, and then and only then can they leave for the night, go home and get some rest, and then we start the actual counting process. But it only takes place here at election headquarters.
A lot of work still to do. Tanisha Hudspeth, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Stay tuned and go to Harris Votes.
Yes, stay tuned. We're going to be staying tuned here to see the latest numbers, and we know that the first batch of votes will be coming in, hopefully in just a little bit here. And Tanisha Hudspeth was joking earlier that she has a cot in her office ready to take a nap if she needs to, but everyone here will be working around the clock to make sure those votes are counted. We're going to stay out here and monitor all that for you, but for now we're going to send it back to you in the studio.
Orkomana, thank you very much. I'm here with Marcelino Benito to look at the big board. U.S. Senate race on the Republican side. As expected, this looks like it's headed to a runoff between the incumbent Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton. I want to refer to Ken Paxton as the Teflon candidate. The guy was impeached but not convicted, one of the few Texas politicians ever to be impeached. He also faced a trial here in Harris County. They reached a settlement. And then, of course, they brought up his divorce and alleged adultery in the campaign. And here he is, appear to be running, heading for a runoff against Cornyn, who's had a pretty clean career, 24 years. And it's unusual for a longtime incumbent in the Senate to be challenged like this.
Yeah, in a primary, this is highly unusual. And Cornyn, Paxton, Hunt, those are the 3 names that Houstonians, Texans have really seen on the airwaves a lot in the last few months. I could probably recite some of their ads by memory.
Yes.
We've seen them so much,
and
right?
Paxton's the only person that did not talk to you.
Yes, I actually interviewed both of them, Cornyn, Hunt, and they were very gracious, gave us interviews. Paxton never responded to our interview request. Democrats. But we see where the race stands right now. It's tight, and we expected this. Polling showed us it was going to be this tight. It kept flip-flopping back and forth who would actually be on top. There's still plenty of votes to count, so it doesn't mean Cornyn's going to end up on top. But you'll notice what you don't see up here is the number 50%. If none of them do hit that mark, they're going to go to a runoff.
Which would happen in May. So these are a couple of veteran politicians. On the Democratic side, you have some young guns, so to speak, who are really vying to make their case heard here.
And it's this race that I would argue is really fueling a lot of the turnout, at least we've seen on the Democratic side. So with 45.4% of the vote across Texas, James Tallarico has continued to maintain an 8 percentage point lead against Jasmine Crockett. Both of them progressive candidates, both of them young. They appeal to different demographics. Polling shows them doing better with different groups of voters, and we're seeing that reflected on the map here.
I know that Crockett, you said, gets a heavy black vote, Tallarico more whites, but Tallarico's also doing well down on the border with Hispanic voters.
Sure. I want to show you real quick before we toss over to our reporter out at the watch party. This is how the race stands in District 18. Menefee with a slim lead over Green, but likely well on his way to represent.
Bit of a
District
surprise
18.
there. And speaking of Menefee, he's about to speak. Let's go to Trayson Bragg, who's at headquarters for Christian Menefee. Trayson?
Been there by my side, covering me throughout this entire race. I want to thank my campaign team, everybody who has volunteered, my parents, my family, my friends, the crew, and of course my wife. It's not often that you got a wife so dope that I had to tell her before this, please don't give another speech like you did last time, because it's hard to follow you. Y'all, we started off this campaign last March, and I was a first-time congressional candidate. Had never run in the big leagues of politics. And with a bunch of people in the race, well-known folks, we came in first place. And then after that, we made history with a 38-point win, sending me to be y'all's member of Congress for the 18th Congressional District. Now, we came out of that, and because Donald Trump and Greg Abbott conspired to redraw the districts in Texas to strip black and brown folks of their representation and hand it over to Republicans, we only had 30 days from the last race to run in a race against a 20-year incumbent. There are parts of this district I have never represented. Communities in this district that I had never even been to. And despite all that, because of the momentum, because of our fight, because of each and every one of y'all giving a few bucks, knocking some doors, making some calls, we are in first place tonight. It's gonna be a very, very long night, y'all. But I have a real comfort that I feel right now. And the reason I feel that is because I know that I'm not alone. This race was never about Christian Menefee. It was about the folks throughout our communities who are without health care, communities without sidewalks, food deserts, havens of pollution, where people are living not as long as other parts of the county with more health issues. This race was always about those people. And I know that as we wait for the results to come in tonight, I know that each and every one of y'all is gonna be by my side. And that means the absolute world to me. I've been incredibly proud of the races that we've run. 3 races. First round, a runoff, and now a primary. And you haven't heard me say not a single negative thing about another candidate. The last round that we ran, people got desperate and then they got negative. This round, a 20-year incumbent getting desperate and got negative. This race is going to be about the integrity that we have for the future. Not about tearing other people down because you don't want to go get another job. The 18th Congressional District belongs to no man. The 18th Congressional District belongs to no single politician. The 18th Congressional District belongs to the people. And Congressman, you can talk all your trash about me. You can make as many negative ads as you want. I'm going to keep being focused on integrity, on standing firm, on doing the right thing, and on serving my communities. So Al Green, you can tear us down, but I'm going to build us up. I'm focused on taking this district to the future. And I will not lose my integrity for no damn elected office. I'm Christian Menefee, and by the grace of God, and with the support of all y'all, I will continue to be your next member of Congress for the 18th Congressional District. We got a long night, we're gonna spend it together, but let's do this thing and take the fight into the future. Thank y'all.
All right, listening to Christian Menefee there. No, that was not any type of winner speech or anything. It is still early in the evening.
Still tight.
Even with 67% of the vote back, it is a tight race. 48% for Menefee, 43% for Green. One of these candidates has to have 50% plus one in order to win the race. So we could very much possibly see a runoff here. We just don't know. It's too soon to call.
We'll find out tonight, but it is, I think, a bit surprising considering that this is a new district, the 18th, but most of the folks who were moved into the 18th came from the 9th, which is where Al Green has been for 20 years, so you would think that he would do better or probably outright win tonight, and that doesn't look like the case. At the very least, it's going to be a runoff. So Christian Menefee has done well. I think it helped him by getting the unexpired term of Sylvester Turner because it puts him out with more name recognition just in the last month.
Absolutely. Now let's send it on over to Katira Winfrey, who is live from Congressman Al Green's watch party tonight. Katira.
Hey, Lynn and Mia, people obviously extremely excited here about what the numbers are looking like. They've talked about, they've been watching it and showing kind of the yo-yo back and forth with the two candidates kind of switching places. But as you heard with the other candidate, people here are hoping that their candidate takes the 18th district. As you mentioned, Congressman Green has been covering the 9th district for roughly 20 years. So his supporters have seen his line of work and they're hoping he can continue that work in Congress, this time in the 18th district. Now, Congressman Green is not here right now. He's actually in D.C. working with the Congress and going under or doing military briefings to see where the U.S. stands in any type of altercation in Iran. And right now he says he's not voting in favor of it. They'll be voting tomorrow. So that's why he's not here right now at this watch party. But he too is hoping to take the District 18 seat and continue his work. He says it's important work and that the district has gone long enough without consistent representation. And so he's hoping to slide in that seat and take over from the current person, Christian Menefee, who's taken over for the late Sylvester Turner. But as everyone here, they'll be waiting to see what those numbers bring, and we'll continue to be out here, monitor the numbers. And again, we're expected to hear from Al Green later in the evening, even though he is in D.C., and we'll bring you that also live. Back to you guys.
Shaping up to be quite the race there in the 18th Congressional District. Katira Winfrey with Al Green's camp tonight. Thank you so very much for that.
Yeah, we do have some things that are totally not surprises. In the governor's race, of course, Abbott cruising, he's going to be in November. We knew that. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick cruising, he's going to be in November. The question is who on the Democratic side is going to wind up facing those will be monumental hurdles.
And especially
on
the governor's side, it looked like Hinojosa was out with the lead
for
early
the
Democrats. Exactly. So we'll see how that plays out tonight. We know there are still plenty of votes to be tallied and calculated because we had plenty of people across Harris County in line late tonight, right? So we are talking about a number of polling locations that at 7 o'clock were closed but still had plenty of people in line, 175 locations, still with people voting when we last heard from Tanisha Hudspeth.
That was at 8:10 p.m.
Yes, 8:11.
170 voting locations were still open.
Yes, and we also know that this will likely be the first time that Harris County surpasses 500,000 voters. Think about that number in a primary with both early voting and election day numbers as well.
I mentioned earlier that I voted today. It took me an hour just to get to be able to vote. That's how long the line was. The actual voting, I don't know, about 15 minutes maybe, roughly, because it was a long ballot. But that was just at one location. Wasn't at either of the other locations we've been talking about.
You were not alone, sir. That's for sure. All right. And now look at some more results starting to come in. Ron Trevino and Cheryl Mercedes are back with our election coverage in just 3 minutes. For now, I'm Mia Gradney.
And I'm Len Cannon. Thank you for staying up late with us.
You're watching KHOU 11 and election night coverage following the Texas primary. I'm Cheryl Mercedes. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Ron Trevino. Right now we're checking in on the voting for Texas Congressional District 9 and 18, two local districts impacted by the newly redrawn congressional maps. But first, let's go to Orko Mana at the Harris County Election Central. Orko.
Yeah, guys, the first ballots actually just started to arrive here. I'm going to step out of the way to give you a look at these election workers and volunteers who are stationed outside election headquarters, getting ready for those ballots. You can see all of these carts that are being wheeled in. Some bags have already been brought inside, and you can see those vehicles there over there to the side. Those vehicles are bringing those ballots you can see right now. You've got some folks wheeling in these materials, the electronics from the different polling locations here to start to be counted. Now, how this process is working as far as what we've seen is these folks are bringing these ballots on these carts. They're stopping them here in front of this ramp, and then we're seeing law enforcement actually bring canines just to double check everything before they bring the ballots inside. So again, you're taking a look at these folks here who have brought these ballots here. And again, we're seeing some law enforcement officials out here as well. You can see one right there with the canine that we have seen for the first few ballots that have come in here. Just checking the materials, making sure everything is good and safe before these election volunteers wheel those ballots back into the building here. So you saw that, the sweep just occurred, and now these folks are going to start wheeling these ballots into election headquarters. We know there are more than 280 polling locations that were open today for Election Day, so you can imagine it's going to be quite a long night to get all of those ballots back here to election headquarters so that they can be counted. But again, the past 10 minutes or so, we've started to see those first batch of ballots arrive here at election headquarters. It is quite the process to get from actually getting the ballots from the voting site. We know that there are 5 regional vote centers, and election headquarters is one of them. How it works is the ballots will go to those regional vote centers, and then they will be transported to election headquarters. So again, you're taking a look at the process out here. We're seeing a lot of folks just on standby as they continue to come. And like I said, it's going to be a long night with the ballots continuing to come here throughout the evening. We're going to stay out here and watch that process unfold, but for now, we're going to send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Orko Manna. Let's take things over to Maria Aguilera, who is at the Orlando Sanchez party. He's running for a Harris County judge. How are things looking?
Yeah, well, right now here the energy is high and hopeful. Of course, I'm here with Orlando Sanchez, who is leading right now in the GOP race for Harris County judge. Now, talk to me about how are you feeling right now seeing those early numbers come in so far?
Well, they're early numbers, but we're encouraged. As you know, that's early vote and the ballots by mail. So we have a long night ahead of us, but I'm optimistic and I'm looking forward to the rest of the results.
Are you confident right now being in that lead?
I'm optimistic. I wouldn't use the word confident because it's, you know, there are a lot of good candidates in the race, but we've worked very hard. So I think we're going to be fine. But again, I'm very hopeful.
At what point in the night do you start feeling comfortable with having the lead, would you say?
I think when we get to about 75% of the precincts counted, then you can start breathing a little easier. Mm-hmm. But it's still early. You know, we have, I think, 275 precincts. Right. None of them have been reporting yet, so we have quite a ways to go.
So we know it's Harris County and it's going to be a long night. Of course, we're going to stay here and continue to monitor those results. We're seeing that some of those ballots are going to start coming into election headquarters. So here and bring you the very latest. For now, back to you in the studio.
With Orlando Sanchez, who has quite a history of politics here in Houston, being a council member and, of course, and the county treasurer for a while. Orlando Sanchez always involved with politics here and the GOP side here in the Houston area. All right, let's look at some of the results that we've got so far right now in the U.S. House District 19 and the GOP side. You've got Alex Mueller with 37% of the vote, and Briscoe Kane with 31% of the vote, impacted by the redrawn maps, seat currently held by Al Green, but redrawn maps put him now in District 8. We've all heard that story.
Yeah, we're looking here at U.S. House District 9. The Democrats, Ernest Clayton, Peter Filler, Leticia Gutierrez, Todd Ivey, Marty Roca, Terry Virts, and of course, again, impacted by those redrawn maps. The seat is currently held by Al Green, but the redrawn maps puts him in District 18.
All right, District 18 Republicans. We have Elizabeth Vences and Ronald Dwayne Whitfield.
And as for the U.S. House District 18 Democratic primary, you still have newly installed incumbent Christian Menefee, sworn in last month after the special election following the death of Sylvester Turner. and Al Green, who's currently in District 9, but redrawn maps have now, of course, put him running in the 18th district. Trayson Bragg is live at Christian Menefee's watch party in District 18 this evening. Trayson, how are things looking there right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been saying the word excitement all evening because I told you that's what we heard from Christian Menefee earlier today, right? That's what he said he felt. That's what he said he was seeing in many of the voters who were showing up in his district. Take a look behind me now. He is on stage, and I'll tell you, there is a pretty large crowd here. This is actually the photo line. He just got done speaking to the crowd here about 5 minutes ago. And talk about it. He mentioned, he has been ahead in pretty much every single moment of all three races that he's run now. Again, we talk about all three, the first being the special election following the passing of Congressman Sylvester Turner, the next being the runoff with Amanda Edwards, and now this race to be the Democratic nominee here in the new District 18. Points of mention that he mentioned in his speech here. He mentioned the fact that, he's running against Al Green, a congressman with 20 years of experience, yet he finds himself excited and hopeful looking at what the numbers are showing so far. He also said that he prides himself in running a campaign surrounded in positivity. He said he made sure that he did not want to spread any negativity in any of his campaigns, and he says that's something he plans to continue to do throughout his career. He also says that the District 18 does not belong to any one person, any one politician, but instead belongs to the people of the 18th. He said he plans to serve the people of the 18th if he is to win this nomination, and then of course moving into the November midterms. Now, you could just speak again of the excitement as you see this very long photo line, people waiting to take pictures with Congressman Christian Menefee. We're going to continue to check in with him throughout the evening, but again, his message to folks, and as I poke my way back here in front of the camera, as I poke my way through this photo line here, sorry about that, a lot of excitement here. He's hopeful, that's what he said, and we're going to continue to share what we're learning here as we continue to look at the numbers, just like everyone here tonight, including Congressman Menefee. I'll send it back to you all for now.
Sorry, I thought we were going to go to a BTI graphic. We have some breaking news in terms of a.
All right, well, let's
see the numbers. It's 58% of the vote right now. Steve Toth, a state lawmaker, is up on incumbent Congressman Dan Crenshaw, 58% to 39%. That's a 19% lead in this Republican primary. If those numbers hold, that would be incumbent Congressman Dan Crenshaw losing his seat in the Republican primary to, again, state lawmaker Steve Toth. Toth, I should note, was endorsed by Senator Ted Cruz. A lot of ads out there supporting Toth with Ted Cruz's name and face on there. So this is a surprising race that we'll continue to watch. Hasn't been called yet, but Dan Crenshaw, incumbent congressman, in real trouble at this hour as we continue to count the votes. If we get back to the big board now, let's talk about the big race tonight that everyone across the country is really watching. That's the Senate race that across Texas. Let's focus in on the Democrats right now. The vote tally keeps going up across the state. The map continues to fill in. 48.4% of the vote in right now, and Tallarico maintains an 8 percentage point lead. You'll recall when this night started, Crockett was up by about 14 percentage points. That has completely flipped, and for the last hour and a half, Tallarico has built on its lead from 6, now up to 8%. Almost just under 100,000 vote lead for Tallarico right now. I want to get to the latest numbers we're getting. El Paso polls close a little later here in Texas. They have closed now, and we're getting some of the early vote. 58% of the vote in El Paso County, and Tallarico again building a healthy lead, a 10,000 vote lead in El Paso. El Paso, again, a very large Hispanic population, so we'll be watching very closely as this night goes on what type of lead he continues to build in El Paso and how the map fills in here along the Rio Grande Valley. At the moment, you see a whole lot of green, not much purple in these border counties. That is definitely good news for James Tallarico if he wants to hang on to that lead. And again, just in the last seconds, updated numbers. We're now up to 50% 46.7% of the vote here in Texas, and Tallarico stretching out his lead just a little bit more, now up by 9 percentage points. It was 8% just a few seconds ago when you guys first came to us. A couple other things we'll be watching as we continue to count these numbers, things that will definitely influence how this race shakes out, and it's what's going to happen here in Dallas County. You'll notice that county is black. That means we are not getting any numbers as of yet. The polls just closed at 9 o'clock in Dallas County. That's because a district judge ruled that because of some issues, they would leave the polls open till 9 o'clock. So they're just getting started in terms of counting votes in Dallas County. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is from this part of the state, so she's expecting a big number. So this will likely tighten some, at least that's what Jasmine Crockett is hoping for. So we'll see what continues to happen there. And one more place we'll be watching closely is Williamson County, and that's right here just north of the Austin area, the northern Austin suburbs. This county is where Tallarico is from. That's expected to be Tallarico country. So if you're James Tallarico and you're up by 9 percentage points and you're still haven't even counted a county that is expected to go big in your favor, you're feeling pretty good. But Dallas County, again, guys, is the one county we'll continue to be watching. One quick look at the other side of this. Primary, the Senate primary. This is the Republican side. John Cornyn getting some good news in these latest batch of numbers. We're up to 53.6% of the vote in Texas. John Cornyn now was up about 2 percentage points now. He's stretched it to 3%. These are statewide numbers, and the map continues to fill in. We haven't got new numbers here in Harris County. This is all early vote. Cornyn barely eking out a win, at least in the early vote numbers here in Harris County. He was hoping to do a lot better here, but we still have Election Day voting coming in. Let's pop into Dallas County here. Republican numbers have come in. Cornyn building a healthy lead here in Dallas County. I'll just remind you that the polling was pretty consistent to that Cornyn and Paxton would be locked in a very tight race, 2 to 3 percentage points. It was up in the air who would be on top. Still about 46% of the vote left to be counted in Texas, so this may still flip-flop, but what's clear tonight is that Cornyn and Paxton are definitely en route to a likely runoff. That would happen in May. I'm being told Wesley Hunt, the third candidate in this race, is speaking. Let's go to him live.
Unfortunately, that person is not me, but that's okay because I always win because I'm a believer in Christ. I want to thank my wonderful team that worked tirelessly as we traveled all over this massive state. Texas is a big state, as I have found out, but the people that I have met along the way, the smiles that I have seen, the inspiration that they have given me is something that I will keep with me for my entire life. And my team that traveled all over this state with me, hung in there, made all the phone calls, made all the pit stops, bought all the Celsiuses. Thank you all so much. What an experience. And again, I will forever be indebted for your sacrifices to this team and to this effort. Thank you all so much. I also want to thank my family. I want to thank my parents, my mother, my father, and my sister, Dahanya, who's my hero. Sister's sitting right there. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for watching the kiddos. And as a combat veteran and somebody that's been deployed multiple times, when I first got into this endeavor, I told my wife, well, honey, we weren't around when I was deployed, but for the next 2 months, I'm going to be deployed. I was gone a lot, traveled a lot, but I want to thank my parents and my support system, and my brother who is not here as well. And I want to thank everybody who is here. I want to thank all of my supporters. For without you, I would never have had the opportunity of a lifetime to even attempt to become a future United States Senator of Texas. Thank you all so much for your treasure, for your time, for your support, for your emails, for your text messages. You all have been an inspiration to me, and I can assure you I will never forget it, and it inspires me to do more for the future. Thank you so much.
Been listening to Wesley Hunt saying that, well, he's not winning tonight, but still considers himself a winner, and he's thanking all his supporters.
Absolutely, and that he's enjoyed traveling the great big state of Texas.
Yeah, things are not going his way tonight.
All right, let's head out to Troy Class, who is with Harris County candidate for judge, Anise Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. We are here at Pearl Bar, where we see behind us, this is the party for Anise Parker, who is vying to win the Democratic nomination for Harris County Judge. Now, so far, the early voting numbers showing that she is off to a strong lead, but is it enough to avoid going into a runoff potentially in May? Well, I spoke with Anise Parker moments ago. I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a second, but I do want to show you a little bit of what Letitia Plummer's watch party looked like earlier this evening, where she told us that one of her competitors, again, was setting up and was thankful for the supporters that have gotten her through this journey. She says that she is excited by what the numbers are showing so far, despite being down, saying that the current results show that she is running a competitive race. I caught up with Letitia Plummer earlier this evening, and here is what she told me about what she's seeing so far.
I have been confident since I entered the race that I would be the Democratic nominee and the next Harris County Judge. After tonight's results, whether it's done tonight or whether we move to May in a runoff, I know I'll be the Democratic nominee now. It's just a matter of when it happens. But I hope we can put it to bed tonight and I can begin to focus on the general election and helping build that unified Democratic ticket.
So, you talk about a unified Democratic ticket, whether that's, at the national level or here at a local level. Why is that so important for Harris County and a community that is as diverse as it is?
I think this is my first partisan race. I've run a number of times, represented people. As public officials, our job is to represent all of our constituents, and I believe that the best way to represent my constituents in Harris County is to have strong Democratic leadership to work with, and that the assaults on local government that are coming from Washington and Austin need to be pushed back against.
So just, when you're out talking to people today, just kind of what was the final message to people as they were making their way to the polls?
I was reminding people of my time as mayor and how we had worked together and how successful it was, but also saying that I was committed to building a better future for Harris County. And it was interesting in early vote because there were so many people showing up that no one really expected to vote. So none of us were communicating with them, that we weren't polling them. So I was actually meeting them for the first time, a lot of them at the polls. And it was a good test of what the issues were around Harris County. People are worried about the economy. They're worried about crime. They're also worried about infrastructure and keeping water out of their homes. They want this to be a place that they can afford to live and it is safe to live. And I'm committed to doing that for them.
And again, that is Anise Parker, who, again, sharing that message with supporters that she has gathered around tonight. I also spoke with Letitia Plummer, who is behind Parker in this race, and she says that she's still excited about what she's seeing from the numbers, and that, she felt that, she's performing above what polls expected her to, though, again, the race, still way too early to decide who the Democratic nominee will be for the Harris County Judge race. And again, that will remain to be determined, whether it's tonight or within the next couple of days as the votes come in. And we will see who will be facing off against a Republican for Harris County's top executive position in just a couple of months. For now, reporting live in the Heights, we'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Troy Kless. Anise Parker seems very confident that she will end up being the next county judge in Harris County, but the night's not over.
Absolutely. As you saw, the results are coming in and there's a lot of change happening. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody, as we continue to give you the latest results in the election. And, as always, there's some surprises. But let's look at some of the numbers that we have right now on some of these big races that we've been following. Well, for governor right now, we've got Gina Hinojosa with 61% of the vote on the Democratic side.
All right, here we go.
And of course, on the Republican side, you've got the incumbent with 83% of the vote. There's no shock there at all.
Yeah, we have here. Now, if we go to the Attorney General race here, we've got, in the Democrats, we've got our Tony Box, Joe Jaworski, and Nathan Johnson. Here we got 47%. We got Nathan Johnson there ahead. On our Republican end, Ron, we've got 42% here. It's hard for me to see the screen.
Yeah, so that's Mays Middleton with 42% over Chip Roy, who's got 30%. That was a tight race, and it continues to be a tight race. It's still very early.
Look at this for Lieutenant Governor here. We've got Democrat Vicki Goodwin up ahead over Marcos Velez, 31%, and Courtney ahead with just 19 here in the Democratic primary.
And of course, on the Republican side, no shock here. Dan Patrick with 85% of the vote for Lieutenant Governor on the Republican side. No contest.
And let's look at the U.S. Senate Republicans here. Our candidates, of course, John Cornyn, 43%. Ken Paxton, not far behind with 40. And over here, we've got our U.S. Senate Democrats, Ron.
Yeah, we've got James Tallarico with 52% of the vote. Jasmine Crockett with 47%. Now, the polls before the election had Jasmine Crockett with more support. But again, it's still early, and up in Dallas County, they just finished voting.
Yeah, with those votes coming in from the precincts late tonight, you can only imagine the switch up that we're going to see there. We've got Brandon Ronninghouse joining us now, one of our political analysts who's been watching these numbers come in live with us downstairs and upstairs. You've been running around like a horse all night. Yeah. What are your thoughts as you're seeing a lot of these changes come in? What are the big surprises that you've seen?
There are a couple surprises here. Ron hinted at this, that some of the polling had these races going in the other direction. So we're seeing some surprises. The polling is tough. You're 100% correct. In a primary, it's really tough.
Even the candidates don't say don't look at the polls before the election, because they're often wrong.
Yeah, it's so true. In a primary, it's tough. You've got a much smaller segment of the electorate that's out there, and so it's really a challenge to kind of exactly know who's going to come out. The fact that you had such a huge turnout in Texas, I think, made it even more complicated to poll, because you're trying to game who's going to come out, and when you write your poll, when you model the poll, you basically want to try to make it look like the electorate, but sometimes you don't know what that electorate's going to look like, so it can definitely mean some problems, and obviously we're seeing some of those differences here.
I mean, do you see a lot of vast changes between now and, say, midnight with the race involving Tallarico and Crockett and then Cornyn and Paxton, for instance?
I think you'll see some changes. I think that the Tallarico and Crockett race will tighten a little bit. It should be very close, like we talked about earlier. I think that once the Dallas County numbers come in, you'll see Jasmine Crockett do a bit better. I'm sure they're sweating right now thinking about how they're going to try to catch up, and they will catch up, but it may not be enough considering the turnout numbers have been huge in places like Collin County, places like Travis County, and all the suburban areas around Austin are all coming in big for Tallarico. On the Republican side, I think you're also seeing a surprise there too. There was a sense that Ken Paxton was going to be up by a healthy margin, and he's very competitive in this. They'll make the runoff, but it looks like Cornyn will probably be the victor coming out of it, which is probably going to give a lot of credence to the money that's being spent. $70 million spent to defend John Cornyn.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. Big war chest there.
They're looking for a reason to keep doing it, and that's probably a good enough reason.
Okay. Well, and Marcelino was showing us the map, and he showed us the black areas where those precincts have yet to report. Are you looking, Texas is a big state.
Yes.
Is that a huge percentage we're looking at that could make a difference?
It'll make a little difference, but not much. I mean, most voters are living in the sort of the Texas triangle, basically, right? The area between Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, Austin. So it's really, that's the kind of most people live. So you'll see some changes though, but if you do look at down ballot, there is a case to be made that some of the rural parts in Texas are going to come in, and so there's a race for ag commissioner that's happening, and the incumbent is actually losing right now, Sid Miller to Nate Sheets, who has been endorsed by Greg Abbott. But once the rural vote comes in, I think you'll see that balance out a little bit. But How much, we can't really tell at this point.
And of course, the rest of the nation is watching what's happening in Texas tonight. But what are they thinking? What do you think the rest of the country is thinking, Democrats and Republicans?
Yeah, they're looking to Texas to understand the direction of both parties. Obviously, the fact that both candidates in the Democratic side of the Senate race are fairly liberal is an indication that the party has become much more nationalized, but also much more polarized. Texas is not in the business anymore of nominating moderates on the Democratic side of things, so this certainly will be telling. Whoever of those two wins this will definitely be a signal. On the Republican side of things, John Cornyn is the last Republican establishment figure in the GOP. If he goes down, then it's really a signal to the rest of the country that Donald Trump controls the party and that the insurgents have effectively won.
Yeah, I mean, this election right now, this is a top national news story. I mean, we're watching it on monitors behind you all night. I mean, there are other elections happening, but on national news tonight, Texas is the talker. Exactly. All right, thank you so much, Brandon. We look forward to hearing more insight from you later on tonight. All right, let's send it out now to Orko Manna. He's at the Harris County Election Central, where, everything's being brought in and tallied up. Hey, Orko, what's happening there now?
Yeah, that's right. We saw you just a few minutes ago as some of those ballots were arriving outside, being wheeled in and being checked by law enforcement, those canines, making sure that everything is safe and secure, and then election workers and volunteers wheeling them here inside election headquarters. This is basically a warehouse near Bush Airport where a lot of work is now underway. We've been talking about all night the large turnout, and now we're seeing the ballots from today start to arrive here. Now the real work begins of actually counting and tabulating those ballots. I'm standing right in front of the election count where folks here, election workers and volunteers, are going to be counting and making sure that every vote is tabulated. They've been preparing for this for a long time. As you guys mentioned, this is a very big election, this big midterm election primary here in Texas, with all eyes on several races, including the U.S. Senate race. So everyone is making sure here that they can get those ballots counted as quickly as possible, not just so that they can get those results to the folks who voted, but also to meet a 24-hour deadline that is in place. That deadline started at 7 p.m. So as soon as polls closed at 7 o'clock, the folks here have 24 hours to make sure that all the ballots are taken in, counted, and processed. So that's a lot of work. If you can imagine, Harris County is the largest county in Texas, the third largest in the entire country. So to get all of the ballots from the more than 280 polling locations here to election headquarters, just transporting them here, processing them, and then counting them here, it's going to take a very, very long time. We've seen just a handful of those ballots arrive here, but we know that, especially from voting locations that are a little bit farther away from here in Harris County, it's going to take a long time for them to get here and then again get counted to meet that 24-hour deadline. The elections officials here tell us that they met the 2024 deadline, and so they're hoping that they'll be able to do the same thing here. But with that huge voter turnout, we know that it's going to be quite the task, which is why they have so many election workers and volunteers here on standby to make sure that all those ballots get counted. Now we know that the turnout has been pretty incredible. Harris County Clerk Tanisha Hudspeth told us earlier that the numbers that we saw for turnout for this midterm primary
Okay. Orko Manna there. Obviously, they've got a tough job there at Election Central. Let's hope that they have a lot of coffee.
It's going to be a long night.
They've got the toughest job tonight.
Yeah.
But what have you been hearing about the election in general, other than what's going on in Dallas County, where they had to extend the hours by 2 hours by what the judge decided was unfair treatment of these voters? Yeah. Have you heard anything else about the voting?
Yeah.
Any irregularities or problems?
There are always irregularities. Elections are run by humans, and that's going to mean there are errors, so it's not surprising we'll see some of those things happen. Obviously, Harris County tends to be a little sluggish. It's always the way. It's a running joke, I think, that these results come in pretty slowly, so we should expect a long night.
Do you think there'll be any criticism of Harris County? I mean, we're getting used to Harris County being criticized all the time, it seems like.
I think there's a kind of a big sigh of relief that the
Yes.
problems that are happening, like are
Yes.
happening in Dallas and Williamson
Yeah.
County, and not here in Harris County. Overall, it's been pretty smooth.
It looks pretty calm there at
Mhm.
Election Central.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surprising, but this is one of those moments that they prepare for weeks and weeks. They've got a huge budget. They've got lots of smart personnel. So we're happy that this is going
All
smoothly.
right, fingers crossed.
Okay, but
All right.
before we let you go for right now, of course, we'll talk to you later. You're not leaving, but you need to take a break. What do you think right now the big headlines are?
Yeah.
What do you think the big headlines are? The
I
big
think
takeaways so far?
I think big headline is you're going to see a lot of incumbents who are in danger. We're certainly seeing that on these races for some of the state positions. The controller is in jeopardy of losing. We talked about the ad commissioner a minute ago. He's in jeopardy of losing. You've also got a railroad commissioner who's potentially in jeopardy of losing to a very conservative candidate who's been extremely outspoken and outlandish in his use of social media and the things he said. So you're seeing a real, I think, insurgency happen here in the Republican Party, and they're wanting to kick out some of these incumbents. So that's one big headline. The other is just John Cornyn in jeopardy. You're going to see a lot of money, a lot of alarm bells going off to be able to try to see if they can save him. He is a stalwart of the Senate GOP. They need him in that position to be able to hold the line on a lot of these close votes. They need his money, frankly, his fundraising prowess to keep things moving. So the fact that this is going to this point where he's in real jeopardy means that it's definitely a sea change in the GOP for Texas, but also potentially nationally.
Yeah, that sounds to me like you've got a big headline there nationally and then also rurally. You're talking about two big changes there, two big takeaways.
Yep.
So as far as the Dallas is concerned and the turnout there and what may happen with the votes, it seems like since both candidates were complaining about the turnaround and voters being turned away at the polls and getting it extended to 9 o'clock, what are the chances that there'll be some kind of legal battle beyond this, since it seems like they got what they wanted?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's always
That's a sure
litigation
bet.
on these issues.
If I was a betting man,
Yeah, there's a lot of litigation around this, and because of the controversy, because voting is something that's so sacrosanct to democracy, I suspect you'll see a discussion about an investigation. It's possible the AG's office will litigate some of these votes. The fact that the Democrats are all in a union here on this is probably a good thing. Yeah, but if it doesn't happen that way, or you have some hard feelings because Crockett loses, perhaps, then the ability for her to kind of pull ahead was really connected to her votes in Dallas. It's possible you'll see some litigation on that. How far it'll go is unknown. It's hard for judges to unring the bell, so it's a kind of slim set of their ability to be able to remedy this, but I do think you'll see some grumbling on this at the very least.
You know, I'm really surprised that you didn't bring up the redrawn maps.
Yeah.
That wasn't a huge takeaway you brought up there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on too. I think certainly here in Houston, where you've got like fully a third of the entire city that's been redrawn into a new district, you're seeing a lot of that difficulty, and that certainly manifests in people's ability to go find a place to vote. But in Harris County, you can vote at any of the voting locations,
Exactly.
so it minimizes some of that confusion. But voters still have to be able to research their own ballot and figure out who they want to vote for.
all right, let's go back to that tough race between Cornyn and Paxton. I believe Paxton is maybe getting ready to speak here shortly. I'm not sure, but we were warned that might be happening. Boy, but what a tough race that could be. So that could end up being a runoff.
Yeah, I think it's pretty certain that that'll be a runoff given the numbers. Wesley Hunt's performance in that race basically was sort of a Cornyn spoiler. He was able to pull votes from Cornyn, but also some votes from Paxton, and that, I think, definitely pulled the number for any candidate under 50%. Earlier in the day, Paxton was talking about how he was potentially going to get 50%. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. Obviously, there's still numbers to come and ballots to count, but as it is now, as we kind of expected,
That says see you in May.
Yeah,
that says see you in May. Yeah.
It's going to be a very expensive time between now and then, for sure.
Now, if you take it from the Democratic point of view, was this whole notion of who would be a better opponent that a Democrat could defeat.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go down that road.
That is the $1 million question.
Let's speculate, Brandon. Let's do it.
No, it's definitely an important question because it is a selection issue, and the Democrats want to find somebody they can win.
That could be a runoff as well between Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett. But
it's possible.
Who would they rather face? Either one of them?
I think that obviously both the Republicans likely to be in the runoff have got vulnerabilities. Paxton, because of his ethical baggage, is the one that they're hoping for. Paxton's also not a great campaigner. He hasn't spent a lot of money yet so far.
No, he hasn't.
So this obviously has been an expensive
But obviously
moment.
he didn't have to campaign.
You didn't have to.
He'll probably end up in a runoff.
Yeah, but the one thing that is a limitation to that is that he doesn't have the name ID that maybe the Democrat will have because they've been running for all of this period,
That's
whereas
true.
he hasn't.
They've been pounding the pavement.
Yeah,
They've
and
covered the ground.
And he's won statewide elections before, but this is a different animal. It's a high-profile race for the U.S. Senate, so he's going to have to introduce himself to a lot of people who the first thing they're going to know about him is probably something negative, that he had an affair or that he was indicted or
then all will
impeached.
come up.
Yeah, and it's all going to come back. So if the Democrats can be clever about how they approach it, I think that there's an avenue there. For John Cornyn, it's a little different. I think that they will play the age card there, to be honest. He has been in the Senate for a long time.
Yes, he
They're going to
has.
ask him, exactly what he's done, and what he has done in large part was to side with Donald Trump, and that's not going to be popular in a
No.
midterm year. So both candidates have got their vulnerabilities, and certainly a good campaign from a Democrat could potentially unseat them, but history is not on their side. It's been since the mid-90s that Democrats have been successful statewide in Texas, and it's going to take a lot of money and a lot of momentum and frankly the right message to make that work.
All right, Brandon, thank you. I think at this point we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
for our country. The final 2 years of President Trump's agenda hangs in the balance. I'm proud to have supported President Trump and worked with him to help him achieve his goals in the Congress. If he's nominated, there's a high risk that Paxton would lose this Senate seat, taking 5 congressional seats down with him. And you don't have to take my word for it. In public polling in the last few months, U.S. Senate nominees are either tied with or beating Paxton if he were the nominee. Ken Paxton as the nominee would be a dead weight at the top of the ticket for Republicans running all across this great state. Over the next 12 weeks, Texas Republican primary voters will hear more about my record of delivering conservative victories in the United States Senate and learn more about Ken's indefensible personal behavior and failures in office. Just like the primary, we have a plan to win the runoff, and we are in the process of executing it. Judgment Day is coming for Ken Paxton. Thank you all. May God bless Texas, and may God continue to bless in the United States of America.
Take a few questions. Jim, you want to start with AP?
Senator, typically a runoff can be a problem spot for an incumbent when you've got an upstart. You feel like, what do you feel like you need to do to motivate your voters versus Ken Paxton's voters?
Well, fortunately, I've had the experience of winning a runoff previously when I was Attorney General. I won a contested runoff for the Republican nomination then. Obviously, we need to encourage as many people as possible who voted in the primary to come back on May the 26th. Fortunately, Texas has an early voting period, which will allow anybody and everybody who wants to vote an opportunity to cast their ballot early. If they don't do it, then they can do it on May the 26th. I think there'll probably be, at last count, maybe as many as 5 races on the ballot, which will make it much more likely we'll see a robust turnout of voters then. But as I said, and as I think we've demonstrated, there's simply just too much at stake for Texas voters to stay home. And I don't expect them to stay home. I expect a robust turnout. We'll certainly be encouraging that.
Senator Cornyn, how did we get here? How is it that in your run for a 5th term, you are facing your first runoff as a Senate candidate?
How did we get here?
Yeah, what is it about Ken Paxton that's driven you to this point?
Well, I like to think, well, first of all, I got a great team. My family, I mentioned, without whose love and support I couldn't do this. But I simply could not in good conscience let someone like Ken Paxton waltz into the Senate as the Senate nominee for the Republican Party for the reasons I mentioned. I think he'll be an albatross around the neck of all of the Republican candidates, including the 5 new congressional seats that President Trump is depending on to win the majority in the House in the midterm elections, which is a challenge given the history. So we will continue to do what we've done and talk about my record of support for the president and his policies and my record of legislative accomplishments. And I would say that, as I've said before, that character is on the ballot. Ken Paxton doesn't believe that that matters. He believes that all of his misbehavior and his scandals are sort of baked in the cake, and he's won a couple of elections since much of that has come out. But there's much more that will come out in the runoff, and which will demonstrate his unfitness for office and his liability of him, the potential liability of him being the nominee in November. I won by 10 points in 2020, and I think I can help down ballot, and I can help President Trump during the remaining 2 years of his term of office after this election.
Yeah, so Senator, the president has expressed support for you and also for Ken Paxton, did not endorse anyone in this primary. Do you expect that to change now that it's gone to a runoff, and do you expect it to be you?
There's only one person on the planet who knows what President Trump's going to do, and that's him. Certainly, I talk to the president on a regular basis. He's got a great team around him of real professionals. Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, Tony Fabrizio, just to name a few. And he understands what's at stake. But I understand also why in a contested primary with three of us, he didn't want to have to choose between us and disappoint some of his own base of support. And I think he wanted to see me earn this nomination, as we are well on the path to doing, before he made any kind of decision. But when or if he makes a decision and to get involved in the race is entirely up to him.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
All right, we've been listening to Senator John Cornyn calling Ken Paxton dead weight,
Pretty much.
saying that he's unfit for office and he plans to win the runoff.
Yeah, basically saying that his character is on the ballot and all of this will come out. That right now it's been baked in the cake and all of this will come out from now to May 26th, and that it will be a robust turnout and that he is counting on winning. We shall see.
Yeah, well, let's hear from his opponent. Is Ken
Paxton
speaking now? All right, let's listen to him.
About time we get uniparty, what I really should say, uniparty Democrats out of our Republican primaries and get true conservatives to take a stand for our values inside the U.S. Senate. I don't need to tell you, but this is not a political battle we're in. This is, in fact, friends, a spiritual battle that we are in right now. And we have a current U.S. Senator that represents D.C., not the state of Texas. Right now, we have watched what happens when term limits are not in effect. We have watched what happens when someone starts to please the special interest groups over the constituents that they were sworn in to serve. And I'm here to tell you right now, there is no better man than Ken Paxton himself to fight every single day for the constituents of the great state of Texas. Do you believe that in this room? I don't need to remind you that just a couple days ago, our current U.S. Senator said anyone that votes for Ken Paxton is and I quote, radical. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty proud to be called a radical conservative that wants to stand against the sexualization of our children, that wants to stand for strong borders. Hear me on this, John Cornyn, if it makes me radical to vote for a man that defended us in court against the sham election of 2020, then call me a radical all day long. I want to say there's no one that stood with President Trump like Ken Paxton. There's no one that stood with everyday Texans like Ken Paxton. I want to share this story, and I had the opportunity this last primary season to travel the state with Attorney General Ken Paxton and help take out some rhinos in the Texas House, which we're doing again tonight, if you weren't aware of. And everywhere we traveled, I got to tell one story, and I got to tell the story of the radical sham impeachment of Ken Paxton just a couple years ago. And I love telling this story. I remember being brought back into the office with leadership. And I remember leadership in the Texas House looking at me at the time being led by Dade Phelan, who is no longer going to be in the Texas House, I might add. I remember being brought back and said, Nate, what's it going to take to get you to to get you to impeach Ken Paxton, our great Attorney General? And I said, all I need is one thing, evidence. And he looked at me, this leadership shill under our current speaker, and said, Nate,
all right, we were expecting Ken Paxton, but that hasn't happened yet.
Yes,
we'll
we're
be
still waiting on
monitoring.
him to come out to the podium.
Monitoring that feed, but in the meantime, let's look at some of the numbers. Let's look at some of the numbers that we have so far. 9:53 on election night. All right, let's go to the Senate race. It looks like there could be a runoff.
There will be a runoff, between Ken Paxton there and Senator John Cornyn.
Gina Hinojosa looking like she's got the lead there in the Democratic race for governor.
Totally. Yep, absolutely. Looks like Gina Hinojosa has the 60%, so it looks like she will be the candidate there on the Democratic side for Attorney General there. We've got, 49% here, Nathan Johnson, and we've got, just behind, with 27%, Joe Jaworski.
Joe Jaworski in Galveston, so we're looking at the races, and we still have some counties that have to be counted, especially up. We're talking about Dallas County. But anyway, we've seen things not turn out the way they were polling before the election.
And look, we have here for Attorney General Mays Middleton in the Republican primary, and Chip Roy headed to a runoff in May.
It's going to be a big runoff election.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that here. And then for Lieutenant Governor here on the Democrat side, we still don't know, but we have here Vicki Goodwin and Marcos Velez. Vicki Goodwin with 49% of the vote, Marcos Velez with 31%.
Yeah, they'll have a tough job going up against this fellow, Dan Patrick, with 85% of the vote there in the Republican side for Lieutenant Governor. Not even close.
So yeah, absolutely. Not even close. Yeah, 85%. He definitely took that, right?
Not even close. So what do we have next?
Yeah, okay. So that is going to do it here for us from our stream here, and we're going to have much more coverage on KHOU 11 News at 10 o'clock with Len, Mia, and the entire team.
So keep streaming. Keep streaming. We'll be here till, I think, 11 o'clock tonight.
Yes, absolutely.
If not longer, depending on how things go tonight.
All right. Thanks for joining us here. We'll see you soon.